Chapter 3296. Ning Shu said goodbye to the Chongsam man and returned to the system space. He gave the system a fire pearl. Was the system too shy to borrow a fire pearl from her to keep out the cold? How was she going to do the mission in this situation? Ning Shu arrived at the location of the space node given by the main system. There were already people waiting at this place. There were quite a lot of people, more than 20 of them. Seeing Ning Shu arrive, some of them glanced at Ning Shu and then looked away. Some of them talked to people they were familiar with. Ning Shu didn't know anyone here, so he just stood aside and played with his fingers. Because he had lost an arm's soul power, Ning Shu felt that his soul power was much weaker now. It wasn't easy to gain a little soul power. An arm had a lot of soul power. Everyone gathered here seemed to be waiting for someone. Most likely, not everyone had arrived yet. Ning Shu didn't know many of the higher-ups. The main system, Taishu Jingqing, and the others were only acquaintances. As for the others, he didn't even know some of them. He hadn't even seen some of them before. The mission this time was to go to the void. That was good. Who knows, he might be able to find some good stuff in the void. These people were all notified. As for what mission it was, no one knew. After a while, Taishu appeared and said to everyone, "This mission is to find bugs in the void. We received news that the bugs are coming back. Now, we have to verify if this news is true." As Taishu spoke, he glanced at Ning Shu. "The bugs are coming back again. How long has it been? Didn't they give us something? These bugs are really untrustworthy." Sigh, as soon as Taishu finished speaking, many people frowned and began to talk about it. Obviously, they were particularly annoyed by these bugs. Their numbers were huge. Individually, these bugs might be stronger than many mission takers. They might not be able to defeat them one-on-one. Even if the bugs were considered a race with average strength in the void, their starting point was much higher than that of humans. Especially when they were constantly devouring and evolving. They could strengthen themselves by eating. In terms of strength, they were barely able to defeat the bugs. Very reluctantly. Ning Shu understood that she was the one who provided the information this time. If he brought her along, he might be able to contact the person who provided the information. Bringing her along might not be a big deal, but bringing her along might bring some benefits. "Let's go." The Grand Elder led the way. Ning Shu walked at the back of the group and looked around. He was a little confused. Did he know where the insects were? Why was he looking for them directly? Someone immediately asked, "Where are the bugs now?" The Grand Elder said, "I don't know. Look for it." Everyone was speechless. The void was so big, where were they going to find it? Everyone felt a little tired. Taishu looked at Ning Shu at the back of the team and said to her, "What do you think? Thoughts?" Ning Shu shook his head. "I don't have any. I don't know." Li Wen only brought her a message and gave her some snacks. Then, he left. God knows where they went now. The Grand Elder frowned. The void was so big that it was not easy to find them. If they were sure, they would enter an emergency state. Now, the organization had begun to prepare for a possible war. Seeing the Grand Elder ask Ning Shu, everyone focused their attention on her. Someone said to Ning Shu, "If you know something, just say it. This will give everyone a direction." Ning Shu said, "I really don't know." Moreover, the information that Li Wen gave her might not necessarily be true. Even if it was true, those rats had always followed their hearts. If they made a decision 1 second ago, they might regret it after a while and not want to go. What to do depended on their mood. The Grand Elder said, "Since there is no direction, just choose a direction. Everyone. Don't be so hasty. Now, let's split into groups and go in different directions. If you find the information, let's split into groups. Thus, everyone found familiar people to team up with. As a trembling little newbie, Ning Shu was the only one left. Because they didn't know each other, everyone tried to find familiar people to team up. It would take a lot of practice to accept a stranger, and they didn't know his character. So, Ning Shu was the only one left. Ning Shu looked at the Grand Elder, who was also the only one left, and a bad feeling welled up in his heart. Did he have to go with this person? Forget it. The teams were assigned. The Grand Elder said to Ning Shu, "Do you want to team up with me, or do you want to team up alone?" Ning Shu, "I choose death." Ning Shu said, "I'll go alone." Skeleton also had some ability to protect himself. If he went with the Grand Elder, he would be a small follower. The Grand Elder said, "Okay, you can team up alone." Someone advised Ning Shu, "You'd better go with the judges. It's too dangerous to be alone in the void." Ning Shu nodded. Okay. Since there was a powerful person, why not make use of him? Everyone, aren't you changing your attitude a little too quickly? The teams separated. Apart from Ning Shu, there was another person who followed Senior Uncle Tai Shu. Ning Shu followed behind the Grand Elder, wondering how to find Li Wen. It was easy for Li Wen to find her, but why was it so difficult for her to find Li Wen? The void was too big. Even if they could jump thousands of miles, they didn't feel fast at all. While looking for worms, they passed by some special creatures and plants in the void. Those plants also had fruits growing on them. Encountering such things, the Grand Elder stopped and said to the two, "This kind of fruit can be eaten. Pick it." Ning Shu looked at the fruit. It was very beautiful, crystal clear like a diamond. One couldn't tell that it was a fruit at all. Ning Shu and his teammates went to pick the fruit. The Grand Elder didn't like this kind of fruit, so he stood aside and didn't move. Even the most ordinary fruit in the void was very beneficial to humans. But for people at the level of the Grand Elder, it was useless. Eating it was a waste of time. Ning Shu wanted to get himself some snacks. The taste of the kidney-strengthening fruit was too damn. It was like chewing a lump of iron. Eating some ordinary fruit to adjust the taste. Ning Shu and another teammate picked a lot of fruit. Seeing that they kept picking, the Grand Elder said, "This thing can't be kept for long. If we pick too much, it will rot. Let's go." Only then did the two of them stop and look at the remaining fruits reluctantly. Ning Shu asked, "Is there nothing that can be kept? Just make a refrigerator." Not only did Ning Shu look regretful, but so did his teammates. They looked at the Grand Elder with pitiful eyes. The Grand Elder said, "This thing will accelerate the decay and energy dissipation once it leaves the body. It can't be kept. Give up." Chapter 3297. It couldn't be preserved. Even if it was preserved, the energy would be depleted. Well, what a pity. The three of them continued to walk into the depths of the void. Ning Shu had never walked so far before. She hadn't walked so far before. Ning Shu gnawed on the fruit. It looked like a reincarnation crystal, but it was actually quite soft, fresh, and juicy. The things in the void were good. Seeing Ning Shu gnawing on the fruit, her teammate also took out a fruit to gnaw on. The longer this fruit was stored, the less energy it would have. Of course, it was best to eat it while it was hot. However, they were more reserved in front of the judge, so it didn't matter if they ate it now. Of course, he was a strong master and wanted to maintain his poise. Senior Uncle glanced at them and didn't say anything. As they walked, Ning Shu felt that something was wrong. Although she had been wandering before, she had been wandering in a safe area. Ning Shu said to Senior Uncle, "I don't think Buggy and the others are in this direction." Senior Uncle looked at Ning Shu. "What do you think?" "I think if Buggy really wants to attack, he will definitely rush this way. We haven't encountered him after walking for so long. We're probably going in the wrong direction." Senior uncle thought for a moment and said, the void is too big. We haven't walked far. Ning Shu, well, maybe I'm wrong. Ning Shu felt that this direction was fake. Li Wen could find her so quickly and then run so far. Ning Shu scratched her head and then grabbed another fruit to eat. Senior uncle. You don't like cleanliness. She scratched her head and ate again. Senior uncle's gaze was too obvious. Ning Shu said, I'm a soul. I don't have any oil on my head. There's no such thing as cleanliness. Speaking of souls, she still had soul poison in her dantian. That was the most unclean and smelly thing. Senior uncle's face was cold, but he kept a distance from Ning Shu. The three of them jumped through space for a long time. This time, senior uncle felt that something was wrong. They shouldn't be so far away. He stopped and said to the two, let's go in another direction. What could Ning Shu and his teammates say? They could only follow along. As they walked, Ning Shu kept changing directions. He felt a little dizzy. Jumping through space was a little too much for him. He was about to spit out the fruits he had eaten. Oh my God! However, the Grand Elder's complexion remained the same. He didn't show any signs of discomfort. Ning Shu looked at his teammate beside him. He didn't seem to have any symptoms either. The reason he was stuck there was because his comprehension of the laws of space was not deep enough. This kind of long-range jump was very strenuous, and it was a little difficult to keep up with the rhythm. He still had to continue comprehending the law of space. But now, the spatial city no longer had any law energy. He felt stifled. Ning Shu couldn't take it anymore. He stopped to take a breather and asked, did the other teams send any messages? Not yet. His teammate said, could it be fake news? Ning Shu, the messenger of fake news, was speechless. The Grand Elder said, it's because we don't know whether the news is true or not, so we have to verify it. Do you think it's true? His teammate hurriedly shook his head. Of course not. It's good news that we haven't found these bugs yet. Then, the three of them changed directions again. To be precise, the Grand Elder was in charge of this trip. The two of them could only follow. Ning Shu stretched out his hand. Wait, let me rest for a while. I really want to vomit now. The Grand Elder could only stop and frown. Why haven't you made any progress? Ning Shu, I also want to make progress. How could this kind of thing be achieved overnight? The law of space was a perverted thing. It wasn't easy to comprehend at all. When Ning Shu thought about the dizziness she felt from the spatial jump, she regretted eating so many fruits before. If he vomited, those fruits would be a pity. But now, he felt that the vomit was about to reach his throat. Ning Shu made a gulping sound and forcefully swallowed it. After resting for a while, the Grand Elder didn't care whether Ning Shu was still uncomfortable or not. He continued to jump. After jumping to the end, his speed became faster and faster. Everything around him became a blur. Ning Shu seemed to be able to see the time. Could it be that they were so fast now? It was said that if one was faster than light, they would see special scenes. However, Ning Shu wasn't in the mood to see strange scenes now. She really wanted to vomit. She was carsick. When Ning Shu couldn't take it anymore, the Grand Elder finally stopped. Ning Shu's face was pale. Oh my God, I won't run with them anymore. I can't run at all. I can't outrun these people. Why did they suddenly? The Grand Elder stopped. Ning Shu saw that not far away, there was an army of insects. There was no end to it. Is it the previous batch? There were more than one group. In short, there were many groups. Ning Shu saw a big ship in the swarm and said, yes, it should be. It was the ship that he had seen before. His teammate said, it looks like they're going for the plane. We're really going to fight. Ning Shu didn't speak, but the Grand Elder walked straight to the insects. Just like that? Ning Shu was a little surprised. The three of them couldn't beat so many insects. Follow them, his teammate said to Ning Shu. Okay, so be it. Like Zhao Zilong, they went in and out 7 times. The Grand Elder walked in front, and Ning Shu and his teammates followed behind, forming a triangular formation. Snap! With a snap of a finger, the bugs opened up a path for the three of them to pass through. The Grand Elder walked over leisurely and stepped on the deck unhurriedly. Standing on the bow, he said, "The guests are here. Shouldn't you come out to greet them?" Little Mouse lifted the curtain and came out from inside. Many people followed behind him, surrounding him. Little Mouse, who was wearing a brocade robe, had a jade-like face. His long hair fluttered in the wind, and he was as elegant as an ancient noble. However, as soon as he opened his mouth, he destroyed this noble aura. He focused his gaze on Ning Shu and said unkindly, "Why are you back again? I gave you something, but you didn't keep your word." Ning Shu was speechless. "You're talking about you. You took something and now you're going to attack the plane." His teammate looked at Ning Shu. "What did you take?" Ning Shu said. "Nothing." Little Mouse stared at Ning Shu. "You don't keep your word. That's, someone's here. Let's have a talk inside." Li Wen came out of the cabin and said to Little Mouse in a gentle voice. Although Little Mouse was unhappy, he still said to the Grand Elder, "Let's talk inside." The Grand Elder walked into the cabin, and Ning Shu and his teammates followed. Ning Shu looked at Li Wen. Li Wen just nodded to Ning Shu and followed them into the cabin. The cabin was magnificent. Little Mouse sat in the main seat and looked at the Grand Elder. "Why are you looking for me?" It was hard to imagine that both sides could talk so calmly. Chapter 3298. Senior Uncle said, "You've taken the things. Why are you going back on your word? So many plane fragments and world origins were fake." The Little Mouse glanced at Ning Shu and said rather shamelessly, "I'm happy. What can you do about it?" But the Little Mouse also had the right to be willful. Next to him, Li Wen coughed softly. The Little Mouse slightly restrained his unrestrained expression. "When did I say I was going to go back and continue fighting? I'll do whatever I want." Senior Uncle's expression was indifferent. He looked at the willful Little Mouse as if he was looking at a retard. This race probably didn't have a high IQ. The word retard was written on the white glasses. Li Wen said, "Do you have some misunderstandings about this matter?" Senior Uncle said, "You're going in this direction. What's wrong? Do you think you have too many subordinates and need me to help you consume them?" The Little Mouse said, There are quite a lot. I need you to help me consume them. I hadn't thought about it before. Now that you found me, I've decided to attack some. I like to do challenging things." The Little Mouse was now like a willful child throwing a tantrum. "What can you do to me? Beg me. Despair." Li Wen sat next to the Little Mouse and said to Senior Uncle, "Don't mind him. He's always been like this." Senior Uncle said, "What does it have to do with me? Who cares what kind of person he is?" The Little Mouse was deflated by Senior Uncle and immediately aimed his fire at Ning Shu. "If you want to talk about going back on your word, you're the same. Some people also took the things and couldn't say it out loud. Now they're coming over." Ning Shu thought, "You're really a bitch. Don't say she took the energy body." Ning Shu said, "I didn't take it from you. I took it from my brother." "Didn't I give it to your brother?" Ning Shu was speechless. This idiot said such words in front of so many people. How embarrassed would Li Wen be? Although the Little Mouse was telling the truth, those who were more observant would be able to decipher another meaning. Li Wen was obviously used to the Little Mouse's lack of IQ and said whatever he wanted to say. After all, if one was strong enough, one could do and say whatever one wanted because one had the capital to do so. If I'm happy, I'm happy. If I'm unhappy, I'll lose my temper. If he couldn't bear it, why should he? What could they do about a child who was holding an atomic bomb? They could only coax him to carry it. The Grand Elder looked at Ning Shu. What did you take from him? Ning Shu. Me. She took my energy body, the little mouse said first. The Grand Uncle's glasses began to turn white. You have an energy body. Ning Shu rolled his eyes and expressed his displeasure. Yes, I did. But I don't have it now. I threw it into the law of nothingness. Come and bite me. Li Wen said, it's just a small piece of energy. I gave it to her. The Grand Elder didn't care about the energy body. He had sensed the energy fluctuations in her body before. Now that the topic had fallen into an awkward silence, the little mouse had an uncooperative attitude. The Grand Elder said directly, what's the situation? The little mouse, it's none of your business. I'll do whatever I want. The little mouse wasn't worried at all. This was his base camp. His army was outside the cabin. There were only 3 people here. What could they do to him? What could he do with such a naughty child? Of course, he just had to beat him up. The Grand Elder stood still. A stream of air erupted from his body and directly flipped the little mouse and his chair to the ground. The little mouse was caught off guard and attacked. Although he didn't suffer any damage, it was very embarrassing. His image was gone. The leader was attacked. The other insects in the cabin jumped out and surrounded the 3 of them. They stared at the 3 of them unkindly. The little mouse jumped up from the ground, pointed at the Grand Elder, and shouted angrily, you dare to hit me? I'm going to eat your plane. The Grand Elder's expression was very indifferent. It seems that you're really tired of living. Your life is too comfortable. I gave you something to send you away, not to be afraid of you. Since you want to fight, then let's fight. If he lost his teeth, what was there to gnaw on? It seemed that the Grand Elder was annoyed. He directly dealt with him in one go. Li Wen reached out and pulled the irritable little mouse. He said to the Grand Elder, first of all, we welcome you as guests. However, for them, the plane is their food. It's normal for them to fight. The Grand Elder said, insects that steal food must be killed. The little mouse's expression was unfriendly. Who are you calling an insect? The Grand Elder didn't bother to talk to the child. He looked at Li Wen and narrowed his eyes. You're a human. Li Wen nodded. Yes, I'm a human. As the Emperor of the human world, Li Wen was neither servile nor overbearing in front of the Grand Elder. Although he wasn't strong, there were many people here. He still had some confidence. The Grand Elder pointed at the little mouse. Hurry up and fight. Don't drag it out. You think I don't dare? Just you wait. The other clansmen in the cabin supported the little mouse's decision unconditionally. Li Wen didn't say anything about this. He looked at Ning Shu and said, let's talk later. I left some snacks for you. Take them back and grind your teeth. Ning Shu was speechless. Grind teeth? I'm not a child. Ning Shu said with a smile, thank you, brother. His teammate whispered to Ning Shu, your brother and sister. Ning Shu thought, fake. Li Wen asked someone to give a big bag of things to Ning Shu. There are some fruits inside. Take them back and eat them. Ning Shu nodded and took the bag. The little mouse stared at Ning Shu unhappily and said, I don't eat these things. They're just garbage. Ning Shu ignored the little mouse's words. I like to eat garbage. Ning Shu whispered to Li Wen, does this affect you? Li Wen shook his head. What effect? These bugs have to hunt for food. That's their stance. Protect yourself when you fight in the future. Ning Shu nodded. Thank you, brother. Will you participate in the battle? I'll watch from the side. I won't enter the battlefield, Li Wen said. You like energy bodies, right? Here. Li Wen gave Ning Shu another energy body. Ning Shu was speechless. What if his heart couldn't control it? Ning Shu asked curiously, Brother, why are you so nice to me? He knew that she wasn't his sister and wasn't related by blood. Li Wen said, at our level, blood relations don't matter. Consider it your gratitude. If I hadn't met you, I would have been buried in the Imperial Mausoleum. Also, I'll be nice to whoever I want. I don't need a reason. Ning Shu gave him a thumbs up. Very domineering. Nice to whoever you want. S. Chapter 3299. Ning Shu accepted the energy body and asked Li Wen, Brother, that little mouse has always talked like this. Can you stand it? T.K. Li Wen shook his head. No, where did you get the impression that I was wronged? It doesn't exist. Well, Ning Shu did not worry about Li Wen anymore. It seemed that the little mouse listened to Li Wen. Li Wen said to Ning Shu, Your leader is very strong. Be careful. Ning Shu pursed his lips and nodded. Of course, he knew that he was strong. He had suffered a lot in his hands. This was the disadvantage of humans. Their foundation was too weak. They were so weak that they could be blown apart by a breath. It was so uncomfortable. These damn monsters. Ning Shu said, I will be careful. I will be very careful. Ning Shu felt that Brother Li Wen treated him well mostly because they were both humans. Now that Brother Li Wen had returned to his birth plane, the dynasty had probably changed. Or perhaps even planes existed, so it wasn't easy to have friends who could communicate with each other for a long time. The past had already vanished into thin air. Ning Shu thought for a while and said to Li Wen, Brother, it's better not to let the two sides fight. I think Tai Shu deliberately provoked us this time. He's probably annoyed and wants to destroy this wave directly. Previously, the organization did not kill them all. It was probably because they needed to collect the corpses of these insects. Secondly, they did not want to consume too much of the organization's power. Plain fragments were useless in the hands of the organization, so they would be given to these insects. However, if the insects repeated themselves like this, they would definitely annoy the organization. They would want to get rid of these annoying insects once and for all. Although Li Wen's strength was not bad now, he had to rely on the insects. After all, it was too dangerous to be alone in the void. No matter what, Li Wen was tied to this race. Li Wen said, I understand. I know what to do. Ning Shu only reminded him. Li Wen was the emperor of the human world. He must have a big picture view of things. Furthermore, there were planes everywhere and energy bodies everywhere. Why would he have to hit an iron wall? This was something that would cause him to lose money. Li Wen was the emperor and would definitely not do such a thing. Ning Shu felt that since Li Wenji came to tell him about this, she must have some ideas in mind. Even if they didn't fight, she still had time to steadily improve her strength. Once a war broke out, she would have to enter the battlefield. The battlefield was ever-changing, and she could die at any time. Although she wouldn't die, her will would crumble. After that, who knew how long it would take for her to be reborn? It was not easy to form an intelligent will. Whether it was Li Wen for him or Ning Shu for him, not fighting would be beneficial to both sides. Ning Shu and Li Wen stood on the deck and talked. The little mouse stared at Ning Shu with an unfriendly look. Ning Shu completely ignored the little mouse. As long as Li Wen said something, the little mouse would not say anything no matter how unhappy it was. As long as Li Wen was there, the little mouse would not dare to kill her no matter how much it disliked her. This was because it would make Li Wen uncomfortable or unhappy. Moreover, the little mouse did not have any murderous intent. It probably felt that its existence made Li Wen care. Like children competing for attention, it wanted to get all the attention. It took away Li Wen's attention, so it was very hostile to her. Little Rat felt that these three people were really very annoying. They were very annoying. He was going to devour that plane and make these people cry. The senior uncle sneered and said to Little Mouse, "Come quickly. Let's go." The senior uncle walked away as if there was no one else around. His teammates quickly followed. Ning Shu said to Li Wen, "Be careful. I'll go first." Li Wen nodded. "Okay, you can go." "Yes, get out of here," Little Mouse said. It secretly thought that when it just woke up, it must get rid of this guy first. The situation on the battlefield was ever-changing. God knew what would happen if they fought. Ning Shu put a big bag of snacks into the mess in space. The energy body was a bit tricky. The senior uncle must know that she had an energy body. She might not be able to keep this energy body. This was given to her by Li Wen. When they were out of the range of the insects, Ning Shu caught up with the senior uncle and the others. The senior uncle glanced at Ning Shu. Ning Shu suddenly felt pain all over his body. However, the senior uncle did not say anything. He probably did not know how to ask Ning Shu for something. Ning Shu pretended not to know anything. The senior uncle said to another teammate, "Send a message to them. We found it. Let's go back to the organization." The teammate glanced at Ning Shu and the senior uncle and nodded. As soon as he left, only Ning Shu and the senior uncle were left. Ning Shu was a little nervous. He stepped back a lot to increase the safe distance. Did the senior uncle want to snatch her things by force? If the senior uncle really wanted to snatch it, this place was not far from Li Wen and the others. Give Li Wen a signal and he can rush over. He can bring a large team here. Although he might not be able to rush over, he can increase the distance and run directly to the insects. Now, the senior uncle was a scion. He had turned into a giant, but with so many insects attacking him, he was also very uncomfortable and painful. The senior uncle asked, "Did they give you an energy body?" Although there were energy fluctuations around his body, Ning Shu's expression didn't change as he said, "No." The senior uncle said, "There are energy fluctuations." Ning Shu said, "Really? I didn't feel it." "You are hallucinating." Ning Shu's psychological quality was very good now. He was very calm in the face of this situation. What else had he not done? The senior uncle said, "If there is an energy body, the organization can pay for it." Sure enough, the senior uncle wanted the energy body. Ning Shu asked, "If I don't want to, will you kill me?" The senior uncle said, "I won't go so far as to kill you. My life can be saved, but I have to suffer, right?" Ning Shu asked. The senior uncle said, "Are you too idle? So you think everyone is so idle that they have nothing to do and want to torture you?" Ning Shu said, "Yeah, I'm a person who's been through a lot. My life is really tough, really tough." The senior uncle frowned and was a little annoyed by Ning Shu's words. "I said, the organization can buy it." Sometimes, he had to admit that although these insects were mentally retarded and only had the instinct to hunt, this instinct could guide them to find planes and energy. The insects, who lived all their lives by instinct, could exert this feeling to the maximum limit. Even if the mission enforcers were looking for energy bodies in the void, they were not as keen as these insects. The mission enforcers sent out rarely found energy bodies. The senior uncle felt that it was necessary to eliminate these insects. Maybe he could get a lot of energy bodies. Ning Shu said, "Can I not sell it?" If he didn't sell it, would he slap her to death, /BK. Chapter 3300. The energy body was a good thing. Now, the grand uncle had suddenly lowered his stance because of the energy body. However, she didn't want to hand it over. The feeling of not being able to protect your own things was terrible. The grand-uncle said indifferently, "You should know that the Sea of Law can't be saved." Ning Shu nodded. "I know, but I can't do anything. I'm sorry." "So, you need the energy body." Ning Shu pursed his lips and didn't speak. He looked a little resistant. The rise and fall of a plane is related to billions of planes. Ning Shu said coldly, "Why? Now you want to put the shackles of morality on my neck. If I don't hand it over, I'll be sorry to the Sea of Law and billions of planes. Then you'll say that I'm petty. Even if the Sea of Law collapses, I can still live. So, what does the collapse of the Sea of Law have to do with me? Because you have it, you should hand it over. Rich people in the world should donate their money because there are so many people who don't have enough to eat and wear. Should people who don't have enough to eat and wear should be pitted? Blame the rich for not working hard. Her energy body didn't come from the wind. Although Li Wenbai gave it to her, she knew very well that she owed Li Wenbai a favor. She gave this energy body to the organization, and the organization would remember her kindness. Since it was a transaction, she could choose not to sell it. The grand-uncle frowned. "Can you not be stubborn? I'm telling the truth." "How am I being stubborn? If it doesn't meet your requirements or doesn't meet your needs, I'm being stubborn. Anyway, you all have your reasons." The grand-uncle stared at Ning Shu expressionlessly. Ning Shu said, "You know that I don't like people like you the most. You're clearly asking for help, but you insist on making people feel uncomfortable. Maybe if you smile at me, I'll be in a good mood. Maybe I can sell it." The grand-uncle laughed. Haha, haha was useful. Ning Shu touched the Meson space. There was an energy body in the Meson space. It was only the size of a fist, red, and very dazzling. Ning Shu realized that the colors of the energy bodies varied. Could it be that the different colors of the energy bodies represented the different powers of the energy bodies? My world tree also needs this kind of energy. "Sorry, I can't give it to you," Ning Shu said. The organization only said that they wanted to buy it, but they didn't give any price. He probably took her things and gave her something else. Sometimes, when benefits were involved, their faces were really ugly. Sometimes, Ning Shu wanted to be a sweet and silly person. He wanted to be a kind person. But being kind without sharpness would be a fool. These people have lived for many, many years. When you talk to them about tenderness, then they talk to you about benefits, about strength and weakness. You are weak, so you should bear all of this. When you're talking to them about strength, weakness, and benefits, you're talking about feelings and warmth. The Sea of Law was about to collapse, so this was her responsibility, and she should hand over the things. Ning Shu unreservedly expressed his disdain and curled his lips. "Are we going back now?" Senior uncle pinched his eyebrows. He didn't insist on taking Ning Shu's things immediately. He disappeared in a flash and didn't bring Ning Shu with him at all. Ning Shu looked at the boundless void and shrugged. It was better not to go with senior uncle. He ran very fast, and she couldn't keep up. She was about to vomit. Ning Shu leisurely walked through the void alone. Occasionally, she would see a large bird. It was probably the legendary Kunpeng. It was so big that it covered the sky. Only the void could accommodate such a big bird, and it wasn't just one, but a group. Such a big bird couldn't be stewed in a pot. He felt that the creatures in the void were generally big, very big. Compared to these behemoths, humans couldn't even be considered as small shrimps. Ning Shu strolled in the void and found some fruits. Before returning to the organization, Ning Shu had to deal with the energy body. As long as the energy body was on him, it wouldn't be peaceful. But to really hand over the energy body, Ning Shu was unwilling. Energy bodies were something that could only be found by chance. It couldn't be bought with any amount of money. Ning Shu was not willing to buy her energy form with just a little bit of merit. Things like merit could be earned, but things like energy bodies could not be bought. No amount of merit could buy them. Ning Shu took out the energy body from the mess in space. It was red, fist-sized, and had a special energy in his hand. It was a little different from the green energy from before. Could it be that these energies were really divided into attributes? Otherwise, it wouldn't feel different. Ning Shu sat down and looked at the energy body in his hand. What should he do? Should he throw it into the ultimate martial arts? But the problem was that he couldn't even enter the ultimate martial arts. He didn't know what was going on inside. Ning Shu put away the energy body and took out a fruit. He wiped it on his body and gnawed on it. He hid in a hidden place and watched all kinds of strange races pass by in front of him. After gnawing on the fruit, Ning Shu returned to the system space. There were layers of frost in the system space. Ning Shu walked into the ultimate martial arts and placed the energy body on it. It would be good if the ultimate martial arts could absorb it. If it couldn't, he would let the world tree absorb it. He didn't know if the world tree could absorb this kind of energy. The red energy body became smaller and smaller. Obviously, the ultimate martial arts was absorbing this kind of energy. A fist-sized energy body was absorbed just like that. It disappeared at a speed visible to the naked eye. At the same time, the temperature in the system space gradually rose. The frost started to melt and drip. Ning Shu stretched out her hand and touched the peerless martial art. She wasn't frozen like before. Could it be that it had absorbed a slightly violent energy body and thawed? Ning Shu wanted to quickly enter the ultimate martial arts to take a look, but he still couldn't enter. He was ejected. Damn it! He had already fed her 2 energy bodies, but this world still wouldn't let him in. If it didn't let him in, then so be it. Ning Shu took the ultimate martial arts and went to the dark river in the void world. He directly threw the ultimate martial arts into the dark river. Now he realized that it was dangerous to put this thing in the system space. He put it in the void world. However, the void world was unstable and could collapse at any time. So he had to check it out constantly. If the void world collapsed, everything in the world would collapse with it. After that, Ning Shu exchanged all his merit points for merit grains. Ning Shu went to the world of reincarnation and handed the mess in space to Zhu Jun. He said, "Give these skeletons more merit points to speed up." Zhu Jun took the mess in space and couldn't help but ask, "Did something happen?" At the same time, you have to speed up the training and run in. Chapter 3301. Zhu Jun. Can you tell me what's going on? Ning Shu said worriedly, "There may be a war. It's better to be prepared in advance. If Li Wen couldn't stop the little mouse, then this war would be inevitable. After all, the little mouse was the king of that race, the leader. Those insects would only listen to the little mouse. If the little mouse got angry and insisted on attacking this world, Li Wen might not be able to stop it. If the little mouse insisted, Li Wen wouldn't be able to stop the overwhelming army by himself. Of course, the winner of this battle would be 50-50. Ning Shu reckoned that the organization still had some hidden strength that she didn't know about. In the last battle, Senior Uncle didn't reveal his true body. Obviously, he didn't use his full strength. Ning Shu had a headache. She didn't care whether those insects were dead or alive. Ning Shu was worried about Li Wen. Li Wen cared about her, so she was naturally worried about Li Wen's comfort. For him and for herself, it was best if this war didn't happen. Zhu Jun asked doubtfully, "What war happened?" Ning Shu wiped his face. "It's a bit complicated. Zhu Jun, I can understand it no matter how complicated it is." Ning Shu took a deep breath, and then, in one breath, she told him the whole story. Then he sighed. It was really tiring. Zhu Jun was probably digesting the information he received. Finally, he said, I see. I'll increase the amount and training. In fact, I've been training all this time. Don't worry. Ning Shu patted Zhu Jun's shoulder and said, You're doing a good job. I believe in you. You can do it. Zhu Jun glanced at the hand on his shoulder. Can you not touch me? Ning Shu retracted his hand. You don't even have skin. What do you mean by men and women? Zhu Jun, women. Ning Shu, men. Ning Shu, okay, go back and do it. I won't be able to go out for a while. Zhu Jun nodded and turned to leave. Ning Shu thought for a moment and entered the second level, intending to visit his child. When they entered the cave, they could hear the sounds of Yaya. Ning Shu walked in. Earthworm was rocking the baby carriage, and then he started talking like a child. Ning Shu realized one thing, which was that children would have to learn to speak in the future. If earthworms couldn't speak, then children definitely couldn't speak either. Would he be a mute in the future? The earthworm glanced at Ning Shu. Why are you here? Ning Shu said, I'm here to see the baby. Ning Shu looked at the child in the pram and felt that the child had grown up a lot. He was fair and tender. Previously, he was very weak and small, but now he was very smart. His eyes were big and round, and his eyelashes were very long. If she didn't grow up badly, she would definitely be a beauty when she grew up. Ning Shu reached out and touched the child's little face. His skin was tender and full of collagen. It was so tender and smooth, like jelly. Can you stop touching? Don't you know that children's skin is tender? The earthworm used its tail to stop Ning Shu from touching the child. Ning Shu withdrew his hand and said, You've taken good care of him. You're indeed a person full of maternal instincts. By the way, are you male or female? Using consciousness to communicate, there was no distinction between male and female voices. Why do you care if I'm male or female? The earthworm said angrily. It was still rocking the cradle. Ning Shu teased the child with a brightly colored toy and said, You have to learn to speak. I'm a soul worm, so I can't speak the language of two-legged monsters. Ning Shu said, If you can't learn to speak, this child will spend time with you in the future. If you can't speak, the child won't be able to learn. He can only be a mute in the future. Is that so? Then why can Liren speak directly? The earthworm didn't expect such a thing to happen. It had never raised a two-legged monster. It hated the two-legged monster, but it still had to raise a child for it. Ning Shu said, Liren isn't human. He copied my thoughts and is already a mature personality. He's different from ordinary humans. In the future, this child will have to learn to speak and walk, step by step. Ah, so troublesome. The earthworm felt that it was going to be depressed. It was so troublesome. I think you should slowly learn to speak so that you can communicate with others. Ning Shu felt that the earthworm and Yi Lin had fallen out mostly because the earthworm couldn't speak. Yi Lin only treated the earthworm as a spiritual pet that would do whatever it was told to do. He didn't treat the earthworm as an intelligent creature. At a critical moment, he used the earthworm as a shield. The earthworm ran away directly. This was probably something that Yi Lin didn't expect. Okay, learn to speak. The earthworm rocked the cradle. The two-legged monster stared at the baby with its bean-sized eyes and sighed. Ning Shu went to the modern plane to get some baby things. The child grew up day by day. The clothes couldn't be worn if they were too small. The clothes were even new and couldn't be worn next month. The child grew too fast. Ning Shu gave the things to the earthworm and left. The earthworm rolled its bean-sized eyes and threw the child to it. It came to take a look and left after throwing some things. It inexplicably felt that the two-legged monster was a heartless stinky man. Ha, men! No, Ha, women. Stinky, shameless women. Ning Shu returned to the system space. The silver-haired man told her to go to the consultation room, saying that he had something to ask her. Ning Shu said to the system, "No need, do the mission." The silver-haired man was definitely looking for her because of the energy body. The grand uncle probably didn't want to deal with her, so he asked the silver-haired man to talk to her. "She is an ant. She is an ant." The system said. "They're still waiting. Are you really not going? Was it really okay to let the main system wait?" Ning Shu said, "No, you saw it too. The energy body was directly absorbed. They're only looking for me for the energy body. I can't take it out. Since they were willing to wait, then wait." The feeling of waiting was not good. The system said. "You can tell them that the energy body is gone. As for whether they believe it or not, it's up to them." The system really didn't expect Ning Shu to be so decisive and directly melt the energy body. The organization said that they wanted to buy the energy body. That was something the organization needed. But to melt it just like that, the system asked itself if it dared to do so. Now it was a bit difficult to clean up. Ning Shu said casually, "Okay, tell the main system everything you know. Say that there's a problem with the world, causing the entire system space to freeze. That's why this energy body was used. Now it's gone." It wasn't that she didn't want to give the energy body to the organization, but the situation didn't allow it. The world needed the energy body. The system. S. Chapter 3303. When she was an ordinary person, she was the emperor of the human world. She enjoyed the power at the top. She could do whatever she wanted. Now, she was not an ordinary person, but she walked faster than people like them who walk step by step. This was a skill. Back then, she also met the little mouse, but their auras did not match. Little Housey likely won. This was fate, it was fate. It was probably the same sex repelling each other. The little mouse must be a girl. Since the topic revolved around Li Wan, Ning Shu understood that it was because of the problem of the energy body. The silver-haired man picked up his chopsticks and picked up some food for Ning Shu, then put down his chopsticks. He used the common chopsticks to pick up the food, so it was not dirty. Moreover, the silver-haired man did not eat. He did not eat a single bite from beginning to end. Obviously, he looked down on these things. In other words, the main system was not an ordinary person. Monsters, they were all monsters. He wondered if the silver-haired man would suddenly transform into a tall and sturdy person. That would really ruin his image. It was better to be picturesque like this. The food on the table was all in Ning Shu's stomach. Halfway through, the silver-haired man finally got to the point. He said, "Should you know about the Sea of Law?" Ning Shu shook his head. "I don't know. I don't know anything. Don't kill me." The silver-haired man was speechless. "I'll just watch you act." The silver-haired man ignored Ning Shu's performance and said, "These insects not only eat planes, but also energy bodies." Ning Shu nodded. "I know that. Isn't that what they eat? The things on the table now, chicken, duck, fish, and fish were their food. Could something like the food chain be condemned? It could not be condemned, unless you did not eat at all. Since you know that human, you can be a middleman and exchange energy bodies." Ning Shu shook his head and said, "It's hard to say. The energy body he gave me was nothing more than a small piece of the insect's teeth. He gave me a small piece to play with. A big deal won't do. These things were the insect's food. As for trading, the insects didn't care about things like merit. Food was their foundation. If their food was touched, these insects would go all out. However, why would Li Wen do such a thing if he were to work together with them from the inside? In terms of relationship, Li Wen was closer to Little Mouse. Furthermore, doing such a thing would only bring more harm than good. Li Wen was a smart person. Moreover, Ning Shu wouldn't say anything. If he really did, their relationship would be strained. In the future, it would be hard for them to even talk to each other. The silver-haired man's idea was pretty good, but it was very difficult to execute in reality. Moreover, the things provided by the organization might not even be what Li Wen wanted. There were many good things in the void. The snacks for her were all packed in bags. It could be seen that Li Wen was actually a hidden tycoon. If he sold these items at the auction house, he wondered how many merit points he could earn. They couldn't give the other party what they wanted. The other party didn't want anything from them. This matter was like eating lotus root and they couldn't come to an agreement. Ning Shu put down his chopsticks and shook his head. Sorry, there's no chance of this happening. The silver-haired man frowned. Is attacking the only way? Ning Shu, why did you say it in front of me? This was definitely a threat. They were obviously going to snatch something. If the soft approach didn't work, they would use force. Ning Shu, is there going to be a war? It was a bit like a cornered dog jumping over a wall. In the past, the organization seemed to have told these annoying locusts to scram and not come back. Now, they were actually taking the initiative to attack these insects for the energy bodies in their hands. Ning Shu had a feeling that the organization was a bit desperate now. The silver-haired man said this in front of her because he wanted her to tell Li Wen. Either fight or give something. Ning Shu really wanted to dig her throat and spit out what she had eaten. Sure enough, these people wouldn't be so gentle for no reason. Ning Shu said, aren't you taking it for granted? Even if those insects have energy bodies, they will eat them and not collect them. The silver-haired man said, it doesn't matter, the corpses of these insects are also useful. Ning Shu, slightly perverted. She was speechless, not because she was worried about the fate of these insects, but because she was worried about Li Wen. If Li Wen did not have the protection of this insect race, it was very likely that she would not be able to survive in the void. Even if she survived, she would probably have to suffer a lot. How could it be as comfortable as it was now? If the group of insects was eliminated, the organization would not leave Li Wen behind. Ning Shu wanted to do it first. If they were really going to fight, in a hurry, she thought that going to the battlefield in such a sorry state would be very difficult. After all, her soul was not strong. To put it seriously, at least the silver-haired man was like this now, exaggerating the matter by many times. Previously, he said that the Sea of Law could last for tens of thousands of years, or even hundreds of thousands of years. Now that he was desperate and wanted to attack the insects, Ning Shu felt that the silver-haired man was probably trying to intimidate her. Ning Shu, who understood a little, was very calm. Even if the sky collapsed, there would be someone tall to hold it up. Furthermore, even if it collapsed, she would still be able to live. At most, she would just wander in the void. Maybe any random race in the void would be able to kill her with a raise of their hand, but if she was careful, slipped away quickly, and acted wretchedly, she would definitely be able to survive. What was there to be afraid of? Ning Shu said to the silver-haired man, just say what you want to say. I am a bit stupid. If you don't say it clearly, I won't know what you want to say. If we really have to fight, I will definitely take the lead for the organization. The silver-haired man calmly picked up some food for Ning Shu and said, continue eating. He even asked her to eat. She could not eat anymore. The silver-haired man said, a little bit of energy body is precious to the Sea of Law. Ning Shu nodded, I know, didn't the organization send people out to look for energy bodies? They should be able to find them, didn't they already find them? They already had energy bodies, but they were still so vicious. Those energy bodies should have lasted for a long time. Actually, there are a lot of energy bodies in the void, but do you know why we are still lacking them? The silver-haired man took a sip of coffee and asked Ning Shu. Ning Shu shook his head, I don't know. That was indeed the case. Then who knew how many planes and energy bodies had been eaten by the insects? It was heartbreaking. Unless there was someone protecting them, these insects were locusts in the void. Wherever they went, they would not leave behind a complete plane, nor would they leave behind any energy bodies. If the organization really needed energy bodies so much, they could also plunder the energy bodies of other planes like the insects. There were too many planes in the void, and too many things that contained energy bodies. Chapter 3304. The silver-haired man said, "We will not touch a plane that has matured, we will not take away the energy of a plane that has already given birth to a plane." Ning Shu, does this mean that you thieves have morals? She did not understand why the silver-haired man was telling her this. How could an ordinary person like her understand the organization's unfathomable thoughts? The silver-haired man picked up more food for Ning Shu. As he did so, he said, "That's because it evolved into a plane. That's the void's love for weak creatures. It allows these weak creatures a place to live. That is why we only look for energy bodies that have not given birth to a plane." Ning Shu gave a thumbs up. The organization is truly noble, admirable. The silver-haired man looked at Ning Shu. However, what is the purpose of these bugs' existence? Since it is a gift from the void, why are there bugs born? The bug's purpose is to give birth to this kind of blessing. If the bug is not found, it can naturally live a bit longer, but if it is found, it is the end. Ning Shu immediately said, "In that case, our sea of law has also reached the end. Since it is going to be destroyed anyway, what is the use of doing so much? There is a problem, but it can be solved. You know you will die, a person's life is not long, you will die sooner or later. Don't tell me you don't go to the hospital when you are sick, since you are going to die anyway. What is the point of looking for an illness?" The silver-haired man said indifferently. Ning Shu held his chin and used his chopsticks to pick at the food on the plate and said, "I only have one thing I don't understand. Since all the creatures in the plane are just passing clouds to you, why do you keep protecting them?" He felt that there were many contradictions. The silver-haired man said, "Protecting these planes is protecting the sea of law. Since the sea of law has given birth to these living worlds, then we will nurture the creatures in the living worlds to protect the sea of law. It could be considered a mutual benefit. Using these people to consume the bugs, although these people were strong, but facing the overwhelming number of bugs, it would be difficult for two hands to fight four fists. Although the creatures in these living worlds were not strong, but if they were nurtured, they could be used to consume the bug's power." Ning Shu nodded, thinking about it this way, it made sense. Being protected, and at the same time, also needed to be protected. Ning Shu said, "Don't. I'm not eating anymore." The silver-haired man put down his chopsticks. Actually, the strength of the organization is a little lacking compared to the Zergs. Ning Shu said, "Since it's difficult, then let's not fight. Let's win steadily and search for new energy bodies." After consuming the organization's power, the souls that could go to the battlefield were only slightly qualified, but how many qualified souls were there? Only qualified souls would be consumed. Ning Shu, could it be that the sea of law can't even hold on for this bit of time? The silver-haired man, of course the sea of laws can last for a very long time. Ning Shu glanced at him. "Since you can hold on, why are you in such a hurry?" The silver-haired man said, "There's no need to rush. It's just that we're going to kill these bugs once and for all so that we can recuperate." Ning Shu shrugged. "I'll follow the organization's arrangements. If you want to fight, then let's fight. Of course, it's good if we don't fight." If there was a fight in the future, she would stand on the side of the organization and fight against the Zergs. If it was too rushed, she would not be prepared at all. The main reason was that her spirit power was too weak. The silver-haired man sighed. Suddenly, even now, she still did not understand the meaning of his words. Why did she have to talk about war? As for whether they would fight or not, the organization did not have such plans. The two of them were speechless. The silver-haired man said, "If he gives you something in the future, you can keep it and sell it to the organization." His words were very direct. Ning Shu made an "oh" sound. She had a look of realization on her face. That was the goal. Then why did you talk so much? Actually, the organization wanted to use her as a channel to obtain some energy bodies from the Zergs. After disturbing such a big circle, Ning Shu had some thoughts. There were some planes that were born in the void that did not have any power to protect them. They could completely take away the energy bodies of these planes. But the organization did not do that. Although these planes were not destroyed after their energy was exhausted, or they were directly eaten by the Zergs. The organization did not take away these energy bodies to replenish the Sea of Law. Ning Shu asked, "Will we be punished by the heavens if we take away the energy of the birthplaces of other planes? Will there be karma?" The silver-haired man was speechless. This was a tricky angle. The silver-haired man said, "There is no such thing as a cycle of the heavens in the void." Ning Shu had a look of surprise. "There are no restrictions, and you guys are actually doing this." There were no restrictions. It was like there were no rules or laws in the normal world. They could do whatever they wanted without any worries. There were no laws or rules. This was a very scary thing. There was no price to pay for killing and arson. They could do whatever they wanted. Ning Shu propped up her chin and said, "If Royal Brother gives me energy bodies in the future, I will keep them. If I don't need them, I will naturally give them to the organization. But my Royal Brother is a human, it is not easy to survive among the Zergs. He might not be able to get them. Even if he does, he might not give them to me." Ning Shu's words were very tactful. He would give them to the organization if he did not need them. And it was not certain whether he would give them or not. The silver-haired man nodded, "Okay." This meal was really tiring. He even had a bit of indigestion. Ning Shu said, "If there is nothing else, I will be leaving." The silver-haired man said, "Okay, you can go." Ning Shu stood up and walked out of the room. When he reached the door, he turned to the silver-haired man and asked, "What is the reason for the organization to attack the Zergs instead of taking away the energy of other planes? Was it benevolence or kindness, or was there some other reason?" There was no heavenly law in the void, no rules or restrictions. If there was a rule, it would be the law of the jungle. The organization's actions did not conform to the law of the jungle, Gidge. The silver-haired man wiped his hands with a handkerchief and said, "There are things to do and things not to do. The organization is not willing to do this because they do not want to hurt the place where planes are born. The place where planes are born is the greatest place. The Zergs can profane it, but some people cannot." "I see, I understand." Ning Shu nodded and said. "In the void, how many planes were born?" "These planes were born from mothers who could not speak. They gave birth to planes, had their energy absorbed, and then died. Even if they were not found by the Zergs, they would die. In the void, planes were born from the void. Planes were born from planes. It was like a seed taking root and sprouting. When the seed matured, some Zergs would come to gnaw on the fruit and food. Cycle after cycle, rebirth after death, death after death. This was life. Chapter 3305. Life and death were eternal. The life of an individual was limited, but through reproduction, one's life would continue. The reason why living things valued offspring was probably because of the pursuit of eternal life. Even if one died, their bloodline and genes would continue. It was another kind of eternal life. Death and annihilation were something that everyone would experience. Whether it was alive or not, they would all be disappointed. Ning Shu felt that life was really complicated. The ultimate mystery of life and death was unfathomable. The silver-haired man watched Ning Shu leave, paid the bill, and left. He then went to the consultation room. The Grand Elder was drinking tea in the consultation room. When he saw the silver-haired man, he asked, "How did it go?" "The little girl is very vigilant. She didn't quarrel. She eased the tension a little, but it didn't work," the silver-haired man said lightly. The Grand Elder sneered. "How can there be so much injustice?" "Heh, let her throw a tantrum if she likes," the silver-haired man said. Weak creatures were like birds startled by the twang of a bow. Even if the beasts were very fierce, they were still very frightened of humans. "It's not injustice. It's fear and panic," the silver-haired man said. "The characteristics of weak creatures. They run away in panic at the slightest movement." The Grand Elder nodded. "That's true. Weak and pathetic. This time, send more people out to look for things." The silver-haired man said, "Got it. There's one more way to find her. Get ready for war. This time, even if we don't kill all these bugs, we'll cripple them. How can they run around without legs?" The silver-haired man frowned. "Are we really going to war? The organization's current situation is not good for war." The Grand Elder's glasses glowed with a cold luster. "Soldiers are trained for 1,000 days to be used for 1 day. Now is not the time to use it." "Okay, then let's go." The silver-haired man had too many things to do next. Once war broke out, merit points and weapons would have to be massive. All kinds of needs had to be prepared. Ning Shu returned to the system space and said to the system, "Let's go do the mission." The most important thing now was to strengthen his soul power. Ning Shu felt that the organization really wanted to kill those bugs this time. On one hand, it was for the energy body. On the other hand, it could be for the insect's corpse. On the other hand, it could also be because he was annoyed. The system said, "Okay, but are you sure you don't want to trade with the insects?" Ning Shu simply said, "No." Li Wen's things were just leaked out from the insect's teeth. He was not qualified to ask the insect to trade with them. What's more, that's what the insects eat, and that's what they pursue their whole lives. The system said, "Not many people get to enjoy the main system's food." Ning Shu only said, "Since you have a request, you should have a request attitude." Even if she asked for help, she would still offer it with both hands. All the system did was pick up some food, move its finger, and raise its arm. It didn't give anything in return. It was just a gesture. When she begged for help, she took out real money. Ning Shu wasn't so easily fooled by a little gesture, so he accepted it calmly. She didn't feel flattered either. She could see through the surface to see the essence. She could see through a little attitude. However, in the past, he had always threatened them casually. Now, his attitude was a little softer. Ning Shu's heart was calm. She also said that it was natural to have something in hand. Ning Shu put away the fasting pills and medicine, and then let the main system teleport them. After a moment of dizziness, Ning Shu merged into a body. He opened his eyes and felt a little dizzy. He sat up and looked around. This was a rather luxuriously decorated room. It was a modern plane. It was just that this body was a little fat. Ning Shu touched the fat on his stomach. He pinched it with his hand. It was a thick layer of fat. Ning Shu touched his neck. Sure enough, he was so fat that he didn't even have a neck. Being fat wasn't scary. What was scary was that he was still a man. Yes, it was a small problem. Ning Shu began to accept the plot. The client was a rich second-generation heir who had a fiancée who was as pure as ice. His family was rich, and he was entrusted to be a carefree rich second generation. Although he was fat, he was stupid and had a lot of money. Once he was rich, he would cover up his shortcomings. There were also many friends and girls around him. Although they were fair-weather friends, he could spend some money to make these people play with him and have fun with him. In the end, he was profiting. No matter what, the client's father was quite strict with his son. To prevent any romantic affairs, he arranged a fiancée for his son. This fiancée of his was a rare beauty. Most importantly, she was as pure as ice and as pure as jade. Her moral character was also very good. Coincidentally, this girl's family business was having problems. The client's father immediately made a request. If this girl was engaged to his son, he would help his family business. This was equivalent to selling his daughter. At first, he naturally didn't agree. But the business situation was getting worse and worse. The girl also agreed. She got engaged to the client with a hopeless attitude. Her temperament was originally cold. Now, it was as cold as ice. She was a famous ice beauty. The client liked this fiancée. She was pretty, so he sent her some trinkets. But for some reason, the girl just threw the trinkets to the side and didn't even look at them. With the help of the Zhang family, the Li family's business also improved. But in the upper-class society, Li Guqiu was Zhang Tianbao's fiancée. Many people sighed that a fresh flower was inserted in cow dung. What a pity. Although there were men who missed Li Guqiu, with the Zhang family's golden name, Li Guqiu was a member of the Zhang family. Although they were engaged, the wedding was delayed for a long time. Zhang Tianbao missed this fiancée. Li Guqiu said to delay the wedding, so it was delayed. Unfortunately, in the eyes of Zhang Li and Li Guqiu, Zhang Tianbao was not only wretched, but also ambitious. He relied completely on his family's wealth. If a woman married such a man, she would have no hope in her life. No one wanted to be told that their man was a good-for-nothing, an ugly man, and a man with a bad character. A man's glory was a woman's talk and pride. What was there to talk about Zhang Tianbao? Even if they talked about him, they would talk about how he was unreliable and useless. In the future, the Zhang family would definitely decline in Zhang Tianbao's hands. Before she married into the family, Li Guqiu was laughed at and pitted by people. Or ridiculed. Even if she was good-looking, she could only be with a good-for-nothing in this life. Li Guqiu didn't like to go out more and more. Usually, she only contacted 1 or 2 girlfriends. Chapter 3306. At other times, Li Guqiu stays at home. When Zhang Tianbao comes to Li Guqiu finds various reasons not to see him. In fact, it's obvious that Zhang Tianbao is a cannon fodder fiancé. The world this time is about a world of fortune tellers. Dignitaries and some rich businessmen like to find fortune tellers to make some geomancy changes, move ancestral graves to protect their descendants, and be rich and noble. Or use fortune tellers to harm people and set up arrays or something. Capable people were honored guests of high officials, nobles, and wealthy merchants. They are very respected, and the money is very fast. Dignitaries can make a lot of money at will. A mountain country boy set out from the village, came to the luxurious imperial capital, and began to stir up the feng shui world in the imperial capital. The country boy's master is a powerful fortune teller. Because of some things, he left the feng shui world, but he adopted an orphan and passed on his mantle to his disciple. When the time is right, let his disciple come to the deep water of the imperial capital to make a try. The imperial capital is shrouded in purple qi, and there are many fortune tellers. Even if the Zhang family also has a good relationship with fortune tellers, people like fortune tellers can't be offended. If they do something to your family's grave, their luck will stop abruptly. People like fortune tellers explore the aura. Their means are used to disturb the aura or smooth out some bad aura. It can be used to harm people or save people. The mountain boy came to a place where wealth was everywhere. Of course, he had to get to know some rich people and make some friends. In short, after a lot of coquettish operations, the mountain boy has a little reputation. Of course, there are all kinds of face slaps. Li Guqiu's best friend Pei Meng met Jin Yang. Jin Yang is a fortune teller. He has the ability to foresee danger by looking at geomancy. Jin Yang looked at Pei Meng's face and knew that she had a section, so he gave her a talisman and asked her to keep it close and avoid a car accident. Since then, Pei Meng has become a little fan of Jin Yang. She talks about Jin Yang in front of Li Guqiu every day and says that her little life is Jin Yang's. After talking for a long time, Li Guqiu also felt a little interesting. Pei Meng said to Li Guqiu, "Why don't you ask Jin Yang to do something about your family's feng shui? If your family is rich or your business is better than the Zhang families, you won't have to marry that bastard Zhang Tianbao." Li Guqiu frowned. Her eyebrows were as dark as jade, and when she frowned, she also had the appearance of a peerless beauty. This made Pei Meng especially unwilling to accept this. How could the heavens' favored daughter be matched with such a second-generation heir? He was also under the control of others. His family's business still depended on the Zhang family. Li Guqiu had always felt that such a method was unorthodox. If this could be done, then everyone would not have to do anything. They could just clean up their ancestral tombs. However, he couldn't win against Pei Meng, so he went to meet her. Li Guqiu was beautiful and had a melancholy temperament. She was cold and melancholy, making people want to protect her. Jin Yang was a man, so he naturally wanted to flirt with a beautiful woman. However, Li Guqiu rejected him at the beginning, saying that she already had a fiancé. Jin Yang felt that it was a pity. But with Pei Meng by his side, Pei Meng told him everything about Li Guqiu's fiancé like frying beans. Therefore, Jin Yang felt more pity for Li Guqiu after learning about it. He heard that Li Guqiu wanted to change the feng shui of her family, so he accepted a yuan and did it for her. As a man, it was his duty to save a beautiful woman from trouble. Luck was something that couldn't be seen or touched, but it was real. One's aura could affect one's health, fortune, and so on. Jin Yang changed the feng shui of the Li family's family. For the sake of the beautiful woman, Jin Yang made great efforts. In addition, Jin Yang also treated Master Li's illness. A physiognomist could practice cultivation, but drawing talismans and so on needed magical power. Injecting magical power into a person's body could make them feel much better. Master Li was very satisfied with Jin Yang, so he invited Jin Yang to visit him when he was free. There was a beautiful woman in the Li family, so he had to visit her even if it was for the sake of his eyes. Gradually, Jin Yang's reputation in the capital became more and more famous. Many people doubted him, but Jin Yang proved them with his strength. He slapped many people in the face and his reputation rose. Many people tried to recruit Jin Yang, but he refused them all. However, he had always been close to the Li family. The Zhang family also began to recruit Jin Yang. It would be best if they could recruit such a capable man. Even if they couldn't, they still wanted to maintain a good relationship with him. If a physiognomist wanted to trick someone, ordinary people couldn't find out at all. Master Zhang thought that his son was good at making friends, so he asked him to contact the physiognomist. A physiognomist wasn't enough to make the whole Zhang family welcome him warmly. Zhang Tianbao and Jin Yang didn't have a good first meeting. Jin Yang used some mysterious means to tease Zhang Tianbao, then he despised Zhang Tianbao, who was a loser, for marrying Li Guqiu. He should take a piss and take a good look at himself. How could he be happy with a loser like Li Guqiu? Fuck. Zhang Tianbao suddenly knew that another man was thinking about his fiancée. Zhang Tianbao knew that many men were thinking about his fiancée. She mocked and ridiculed him, but she was envious and jealous of him. Those men who said bad things about Li Guqiu behind her back, Zhang Tianbao beat them up. This country boy looked like he was fighting for Li Guqiu, which immediately annoyed Zhang Tianbao. Naturally, the grudge was formed. He also asked him to break off the engagement with Li Guqiu. How could he do that? Li Guqiu was his fiancée. If he had bad intentions towards his fiancée, he wouldn't break off the engagement. Master Zhang heard about it. He was angry that his son offended a physiognomist, but he was also very angry when he heard about it. A physiognomist thought too highly of himself. The Zhang family had a lot of money. As long as they gave more money, there would be physiognomists coming to the Zhang family. Even if Jin Yang did something to the Zhang family, there would be other physiognomists helping him. Zhang Tianbao felt a strong sense of crisis. He wanted to marry Li Guqiu. They had been engaged for so many years, but they didn't get married. Zhang Tianbao also knew that Li Guqiu didn't want to marry him, so it dragged on for so long. Now, it couldn't drag on anymore. Unsurprisingly, Li Guqiu didn't want to, so the Li family dragged on. The Zhang family was also angry. After helping the Li family, they let the two of them get married. The engagement was just the sincerity of the contract. The Zhang family gave a deadline. They had to get married within 3 months. Li Guqiu thought that this day had finally come. She was really going to marry a person she hated and didn't love. She asked Zhang Tianbao to let her go. She said that she didn't love him. The fat on Zhang Tianbao's face trembled. He roared directly. Since you didn't want to, then you shouldn't have agreed before. After dragging on for so long, you said that you didn't want to. Chapter 3307. Li Guqiu said painfully in the face of Zhang Tianbao's ferocious face. That was what her family wanted, and she didn't want to do it. Even if Zhang Tianbao was a rich second generation, he still knew how to profit. How could there be such a good thing in the world? After getting the money, the Li family had survived the most difficult time, and now they wanted to send him away just because she didn't like him. Impossible. It was fine to break off the engagement, but they had to return the money and technology they had invested. Double. Even if they borrowed from a loan shark, there should be interest. Li Guqiu's face was pale. Double the money and technology would definitely hurt the Li family. She knew that it was the Zhang family's fault, but there was nothing she could do. When the beauty was in trouble, Jin Yang would naturally step forward. First, he checked all the feng shui of the Li family. He found that there was something wrong with the Li family's ancestral grave, so he found a place with good feng shui and moved the ancestral grave. Then, he used his connections to inject new funds into the Li family. Jin Yang saved the Li family like a god, and the Li family's attitude toward Jin Yang was unprecedentedly good. The old man even discussed letting Li Guqiu and Jin Yang be together. Jin Yang was precious not only because of his powerful physiognomy, but also because of his powerful connections. Many people owed Jin Yang a favor. It was inevitable that people would have low points and disasters in their lives, not to mention that a physiognomy master could save people and harm people. Having a son-in-law like Jin Yang was equivalent to having a protective talisman. The Zhang family thought that taking away the funds would make the Li family compromise, but it didn't, which made the Zhang family very angry. Moreover, the other party came to break off the engagement. After so many years, they had used the Zhang family. Now that they were done, they were really angry. The two families began to fight, from the business to the competition between the physiognomy masters. Jin Yang started to learn physiognomy from a young age. He had a deep foundation, and with his luck, he was invincible. The physiognomy masters hired by the Zhang family all failed and even suffered a backlash. The Zhang family's luck was also changed by Jin Yang. Unlike the Li family's meteoric rise, the Zhang family's situation was getting worse and worse, and everything they did was not smooth. They suffered repeated setbacks in the business field, and soon the capital chain was broken. Moreover, many physiognomy masters couldn't break Jin Yang's methods, and even if they could, they were unwilling to do so. There were unspoken rules in the world of physiognomy masters. If they really broke Jin Yang's trap, they would be offending Jin Yang. Therefore, the Zhang family's unlucky days were particularly miserable. Their family members were either sick or had accidents. Even if they didn't die, they would be crippled. The situation at home was terrible. Zhang Tianbao was so angry that he rushed to the Li family with a knife. However, he was blinded by Jin Yang's methods. When he returned home, he stabbed himself to death. After reading up to this point, he more or less understood that the client was just someone Jin Yang was sizing up on his way to pick up girls. Moreover, he was a rich, brainless, and arrogant second-generation rich kid. A country boy had turned the tables on a rich second generation and obtained the favor of the goddess. He had become cannon fodder for a rich second generation. Only a few filthy rich second generation heirs. So what if they were rich? They could destroy them in a matter of minutes. It felt so good. The client was angry and hateful, and so was Jin Yang and Li Guqiu. His feelings for Li Guqiu were especially complicated and tangled. After all, he had spent the most time and affection on Li Guqiu. He kept him hanging and then kicked him away when he found a new backer. In the end, he was the one who harmed the Zhang family. The future generations of the Zhang family would also be poor. Once the Zhang family weakened, they would die or be crippled. Then, because of the ancestral grave, the future generations of the Zhang family would probably be poor forever. This method made Jin Yang famous in the world of fortune tellers. No one dared to offend him. This method was almost to the point of not having any descendants. However, it wasn't much better than not having any descendants. Letting the future generations suffer, this kind of slow torture was even more torturous. When the future generations sighed, they would resent their ancestors for offending fortune tellers. Zhang Tianbao wanted to change this situation. At least, he didn't want to implicate the future generations. This world was the world of fortune tellers, so the ability of fortune tellers was magnified a lot. A fortune teller's methods could affect the rise and fall of a family. The main reason was that the protagonist was a fortune teller. Later, Li Guqiu became Zhang Tianbao's confidant, but she couldn't marry Jin Yang. As Jin Yang's reputation grew, more and more people wanted him as a son-in-law, and more women were attracted to him. In fact, Li Guqiu slowly became ordinary and calm. The feeling of getting something and wanting something that couldn't be had was different. It was clearly the same thing, but after getting it, the feeling was completely different. However, now that the Li family was relying on Jin Yang, even if they couldn't marry their daughter to Jin Yang, it was necessary to maintain a good relationship with Jin Yang. It was fine even if their daughter was willing to be Jin Yang's lover. Of course, they would be happy to help. Ning Shu touched his face. He was too fat and had to lose weight. Being too fat wasn't good for his body. Since he didn't have any ability, he would use his appearance to deceive people. Zhang Tianbao didn't have any ability and didn't have a good appearance. If he had a slightly better appearance, Li Guqiu wouldn't have rejected him so much. When buying things, one had to look at the packaging. Ning Shu climbed up from the bed and looked in the mirror. He pinched his face and stomach. It was indeed a look that made people want to return the goods. From now on, he would start working out. It was important to have a good appearance. His current appearance was quite wretched. He looked like a pig at a glance. There was some spiritual energy in this world that could allow fortune tellers to cultivate. In the later stages, Jin Yang was especially powerful. He was just short of breaking through the plane and ascending. Ning Shu began to absorb spiritual energy to cultivate peerless martial arts, but the spiritual energy wasn't very rich. Jin Yang's 5 elements, 8 trigrams, and feng shui attainments were very high. Ning Shu didn't know if his methods were good enough. Also, Li Guqiu's matter had to be solved. Since Li Guqiu didn't want to marry him, then forget it. However, Li Guqiu wanted to talk about money and love. Because the interests were satisfied, now she wanted to marry the person she loved. Getting one was an extravagant wish for the other. Time was a perfect way to settle both. Ning Shu stayed in the room for a day. In the evening, Father Zhang came back and asked his son where he went to ghost today. Of course, he knew his son's character. He liked to go to bars when he had nothing to do. However, if he dared to do something inexplicable, he would break his legs. The servant said that the young master stayed in the room for a day and didn't come out to eat. They didn't know if something had happened. Father Zhang was a little surprised. He suddenly didn't go out to fool around with those bad friends for a day. He was a little used to it. Father Zhang walked into the room and saw his son lying on the bed. He walked over and asked, "Tianbao, what's wrong?" Zhang Tianbao didn't have a mother. His mother had died long ago. He was busy with business. This child was almost raised freely. Therefore, as long as he didn't do anything out of line, Father Zhang would listen to him. Chapter 3308. He wanted to find a good wife for Zhang Tianbao, so he chose the girl from the Li family. The girl from the Li family was beautiful, and there were no rumors about her. She was a good girl. To be honest, the girl was more than enough for Zhang Tianbao. It was Zhang Tianbao who was not good enough for her. Although Zhang Tianbao was his son, Zhang Tianbao could not find any outstanding aspects of his son. If he had to choose one, it would be that Zhang Tianbao was better at eating, drinking, and playing than ordinary people. Zhang Tianbao pushed Ning Shu roughly. He probably thought that Ning Shu was so fat that he could not wake him up if he did not use some strength. Ning Shu rubbed his eyes and called his father. "What are you doing? You stayed at home all day." Zhang Tianbao was a little worried about him. Ning Shu said with a deep face, "Dad, I am thinking about life now." But with Ning Shu's pig face, it was a little unbearable to look at. Zhang Tianbao was suddenly happy and asked, "How is your thinking? How do you feel about your life? What was there to think about after eating, drinking, and playing for more than 20 years? A life that could be summed up in 4 words only needed 1 day to think about it." Ning Shu said, "Dad, I want to break off the engagement with Li Guqiu. She is not willing to marry me, and I don't want to marry a cold girl." "Oh, really?" Zhang Tianbao did not believe that his son was willing to part with a beautiful girl like Li Guqiu. Besides, this boy cared about Li Guqiu a lot. Ning Shu said, "It's okay. Break it off. She won't like me." Not every fat man was like her second brother, who could be loved and doted on. He deliberately let others feed him. Zhang Tianbao's face became serious. He looked at Ning Shu and said, "Are you telling the truth or are you just saying it out of anger? She is a girl. You just need to coax her." Ning Shu almost wanted to roll his eyes. It was useless to coax her. If his handsome face could be said to be superficial, he was not even superficial. "I've thought about it for a whole day. I've decided to break off the engagement." "I've thought it through very clearly," Ning Shu said. "It's better to leave early." Ning Shu felt that he was a good person. If he broke off the engagement, he could help Li Guqiu and Jin Yang. If Li Guqiu was willing to follow Jin Yang without a proper title, then it was true love. Moreover, as a physiognomist, there was always a lack of something. Widows, loneliness, or crippled bodies, blind, or crippled legs. After all, they were the ones who revealed the secrets of the heavens, so they had to take something from them. Therefore, some physiognomists could be said to be unmarried for the rest of their lives, or perhaps they were not fated to have children. Jin Yang used this reason to refuse to get married, and Jin Yang's master also said the same thing. This was how Li Guqiu became his confidant. As for what happened later, whether she never married or not, that was after Zhang Tianbao's death. After all, Zhang Tianbao died very early, and he committed suicide by stabbing himself to death. This is not something that can be broken off just because you said so. In the past 3 or 4 years, we have invested a lot of money and technology into the Li family. If you say you're not going to do it, the investment will go down the drain. Ning Shu said directly, what's the big deal? Just get it back. Willful. Zhang Tianbao's father knocked Ning Shu's head. Don't mention this again. My dear father, Li Guqiu's heart is not with me. After marrying me, it's like sleeping with an ice woman. Can you bear to let your son suffer like this? Even if it was a cooperation of interests, even if they were partners, Li Guqiu did not seem to have any cooperative spirit at all. For the sake of the benefits that the Zhang family could bring to the Li family, Li Guqiu should treat her better. But she did not. Zhang Tianbao's father can't bear it. Ning Shu curled his lips and watched Zhang Tianbao's father leave the room. Zhang Tianbao's father treated his son well. At least he was not in a hurry to find a stepmother. However, he had a mistress. They were boyfriend and girlfriend. They had not married for so many years. There was only the father and son in the family. However, there were quite a lot of people in the Zhang family. Zhang Tianbao's father had other siblings, forming a huge family. The Zhang family was considered an established wealthy family in the capital. The clients were uncles, cousins, aunts, and cousins. However, because Jin Yang had tampered with the ancestral grave, it affected these people and implicated a large number of people. This was a matter of snatching love, and so many people were involved. Many of them had no direct grudges with Jin Yang. This kind of thing that touched the ancestral tombs was also extremely vicious, taking drastic measures to deal with it. However, because it was used on the Zhang family, they only felt a sense of satisfaction. During dinner, Ning Shu told Zhang Tianbao's father again. Zhang Tianbao's father ignored Ning Shu. I'm very tired. Don't talk to me about this. Ning Shu hurriedly poured water for Zhang Tianbao's father. Dad, drink some water. Dad, you've worked hard. Zhang Tianbao's father was indifferent to Ning Shu's flattery. Don't think about this matter. This is not a matter of whether you want to or not. It's a big loss to invest so much in the Li family and then withdraw. Useless thing. Can't you be more attentive to the girl and change her opinion of you? Also, don't eat, drink, and play all day. Look at your stomach, it's bigger than mine. Ning Shu pinched the fat on his stomach. He felt a little stifled. It seemed that it would not be easy to break off the engagement. Did he have to wait until Li Guqiu could not take it anymore? Li Guqiu had been enduring for so many years. For the Li family, she endured it because of Zhang Tianbao's fiancé. Zhang Tianbao was anxious to get married, so Li Guqiu finally could not take it anymore and said that she was unwilling to get married. Whether Zhang Tianbao's father agreed to the divorce or not, in the end, the two families would collapse. There was no hurry. It was not a big problem. Now, he wanted to cultivate and pick up the Maoshan technique from before. He did not know the difference between this world's physiognomy and the Maoshan technique. If there was a need, Ning Shu felt that he still had to learn about this world's physiognomy. After all, if you know yourself and your enemy, you will never be defeated. The other party used physiognomy as a means of attack. She had to understand it. Just now, when they were eating, Ning Shu looked at Zhang Tianbao's face and found that there was a little black gas between his eyebrows. It was just faintly discernible and not obvious, indicating that there was a big disaster. In the plot, Zhang Tianbao's father was injured in a car accident. That was why Zhang Tianbao was so angry that he wanted to kill the Li family. Anger, grievance, and resentment filled Zhang Tianbao's heart. He could not think calmly and think about perishing together with Jin Yang and the Li family. She naturally had a way to make Li Guqiu say that she did not want to get married. After that, Ning Shu went to the gym every day. She felt that the gym was too noisy, so she found a fitness coach to come home to teach her. This was the advantage of being rich. Everything could be done smoothly and easily. Therefore, Zhang Tianbao, who was usually playful, suddenly disappeared. Chapter 3309. Zhang Tianbao was nowhere to be seen in bars, racing arenas, and all kinds of high-end places. So his friends who usually ate, drank, and played with him called Zhang Tianbao. Without Zhang Tianbao, they didn't dare to eat too expensive and have too much fun. After all, Zhang Tianbao didn't pay the bill. Ning Shu had just finished working out, and his fat body was shaking. He wiped his sweat with a towel and picked up his phone. There were many missed calls. Ning Shu made a call to her friends. Ning Shu said, "I'm going to marry your sister-in-law. In order to look better, I've decided to lose weight at home. I won't come out for a while. You guys can have fun by yourselves." "Brother, are you really going to get married?" Did Li Guqiu agree? Ning Shu. Of course. She didn't agree. She spread the news. Li Guqiu would definitely panic. She would definitely come to her to talk about breaking off the engagement. Moreover, Jin Yang had probably just arrived in the capital and hadn't established herself yet. Now that she said she was going to get married, Li Guqiu would definitely be caught off guard. Now the Li family still needed the support of the Zhang family, and Li Guqiu was unwilling to marry her. Since she didn't want to get married and had to delay it, Li Guqiu was probably very tired. "When the time comes, I'll invite everyone to the wedding banquet. There will be enough wine," Ning Shu said generously. These friends immediately began to congratulate Ning Shu. They said that he would get the beauty back and have a baby soon. Ning Shu listened to these words in one ear and out the other. When these people were rich, they would compliment you and play with you. But when they were down, they would be the first to rush out to hit you when you were down. They probably wanted to vent the anger they had suffered from Zhang Tianbao. Ning Shu hung up the phone and then started to work out. He was too fat. Why did he feel that losing weight was so familiar? Whenever the client was a plate, Ning Shu wanted to lose weight immediately. After all, image was really important. Without a stereotypical beauty, there wouldn't be an interesting soul. The news that Ning Shu was going to marry Li Guqiu spread. In fact, many people were jealous of Ning Shu. He didn't have any ability at all, and he actually married the goddess in their hearts. It was such a waste of their goddess. This news spread very quickly and soon reached Li Guqiu's ears. Li Guqiu was dumbfounded. She looked at her best friend in a daze and panicked. Although she knew that this day would come sooner or later, when it really came, it was really despairing. After marrying a rich playboy like Zhang Tianbao, what other purpose did she have in life other than eating, drinking, and playing? Seeing that Li Guqiu was not speaking, Pei Meng could not help but say anxiously, "Guqiu, you have to think carefully. Do you really want to marry such a person? Your life will be ruined, do you know that?" The Zhang family acted first and reported later. They let everyone know that you were going to get married. You were forced to marry that trash, Zhang Tianbao. Pei Meng looked at her best friend's beautiful face and felt that it was not worth it. Li Guqiu was good at everything, but she was implicated by her family. The Li family used Li Guqiu to get benefits from the Zhang family. Li Guqiu was in pain and at a loss. But what can I do? The Li family needed the Zhang family, but she was not willing to marry Zhang Tianbao. Pei Meng thought for a moment and said, "Guqiu, why don't you find a master to help you? I was in a car accident before, but because the master gave me something, the car was deformed. I only scratched the skin a little." Li Guqiu shook her head. Instead of looking for these charlatans, it was better to look for Zhang Tianbao directly. Li Guqiu asked Pei Meng to accompany her to talk to Zhang Tianbao. Pei Meng followed Li Guqiu to the Zhang family's villa. The two sat in the living room and waited for Zhang Tianbao. Pei Meng sat on the sofa and looked dissatisfied. What is Zhang Tianbao doing? Why hasn't he appeared yet? He made us wait for so long. Li Guqiu clenched her fists and her palms were full of sweat. She just said, wait patiently. Ning Shu took a shower, changed his clothes and went downstairs. Seeing the two beautiful girls in the living room, his eyes suddenly lit up. What a beautiful girl. Beautiful things were so pleasing to the eye. Pei Meng snorted coldly and turned her head to the side. She was very dissatisfied with Ning Shu's lecherous eyes. In front of his fiancée, he was actually looking at another girl lustfully. And this girl was his fiancée's best friend. He was simply a beast, a scum among scums. Ning Shu sat down. He wanted to cross his legs, but his legs were too thick. It was unsightly to cross them. If it were a pair of long legs, crossing them would certainly be pleasing to the eye. Ning Shu silently put down his legs and asked the two girls, "Why are you looking for me?" Before Li Guqiu spoke, the outspoken Pei Meng said first, "Why did you tell others that you are going to marry Guqiu?" Ning Shu said indifferently, "What's wrong with that? We're already engaged. What's wrong with getting married?" "Of course not. You didn't discuss it with Guqiu and unilaterally announced your marriage. What do you think of Guqiu?" Ning Shu said, "If she doesn't want to get married, just say so. She didn't say anything, so I thought she wanted to get married. If she doesn't accept or reject it, how do I know what she is thinking?" Li Guqiu took a deep breath and her temperament became even more melancholy. She asked Zhang Tianbao, "Do you have to get married in such a hurry?" Ning Shu shook his head. "This is not considered a hurry. We have been together for several years. We are not young anymore. What should be done is done." Li Guqiu said, "I want to wait a little longer." "Yes, you have to let Guqiu be mentally prepared." Ning Shu said, "Is a few years not enough? If you really don't want to get married, I won't force you." Li Guqiu looked at Ning Shu and was stunned for a moment. It seemed that she couldn't believe that this man would let go just like that. She looked at Ning Shu. Probably because they hadn't seen each other for a long time, Li Guqiu felt that this man had changed a lot. Although he was still round, at least he didn't have a fierce face. His complexion was also good. However, the entire upper class of the capital knew what kind of person this man was. He was a good-for-nothing playboy. Ning Shu continued, "If Li Guqiu doesn't want to marry me, then break off the engagement. It's too uncomfortable to leave her hanging for no reason. I can also marry someone else." The two girls were stunned, as if they didn't understand Ning Shu's words. When Pei Meng reacted, she jumped up. "What did you say? You want to break off the engagement with Guqiu?" Ning Shu was very calm. "Can't I? What are you talking about? If you break off the engagement, how can Guqiu live?" Li Guqiu was simply a joke to be broken off the engagement by a good-for-nothing playboy. She was already very aggrieved to be engaged to a good-for-nothing Zhang Tianbao. Chapter 33:10. Now that Zhang Tianbao, the trash, had broken off the engagement, they would look down on Li Guqiu. Even Zhang Tianbao, the trash, could break off the engagement. Li Guqiu's life would be very difficult in the future. Speaking of Li Guqiu, others would say that Li Guqiu was a worthless person, and other men would be even more frivolous to Li Guqiu. Ning Shu rolled his eyes impolitely. "Then what do you think we should do? Aren't you too much of a bully? You want to get benefits from the Zhang family, but you don't want to get married. If you break off the engagement, Li Guqiu won't be able to live." "Oh, I should sacrifice my own happiness to help Li Guqiu. Li Guqiu is nothing. She took our Zhang family's money and got a Zhang family's fiancé. This title is an insult, but it is also a blessing for the Li family." Many people looked at the Li family in a new light because of the marriage between the Li family and the Zhang family. If they could give benefits, they would give. If they could take a step back, they would take a step back. "You are so kind. You kind girls, let me go. I'm a useless trash. How can you ruin me? You don't want to marry me, and you don't want me to break off the engagement. Your Li family is reluctant to give up the benefits of the Zhang family. Doesn't your conscience hurt? Pei Meng and Li Guqiu were rendered speechless by Ning Shu's incessant rambling. Li Guqiu, in particular, felt very embarrassed. Some things were just so hard to accept when said out loud. But what Zhang Tianbao said was the truth, so it was particularly unacceptable. Pei Meng sneered and said, Zhang Tianbao, aren't you just relying on your stinky money to do whatever you want? What do you have except for some stinky money? And it's not your money. You are useless. What's the use of you except for your reincarnation? Ning Shu directly put his legs on the tea table and said, I just have some stinky money. What's the use of me? My reincarnation skill is good. You are not convinced. You don't even have some stinky money. You are making trouble with me like this. You came to me for some stinky money. I have more stinky money than you. Li Guqiu and Pei Meng's families were also rich, but not as rich as the Zhang family. Your best friend is so tolerant. She doesn't love me and still wants to get engaged to me. Isn't it all for a few stinky bucks? Since she despises a few stinky bucks so much, she should have just disagreed with the engagement in the first place. You don't even have the stinky money that you despise. What else do you have? Ning Shu retorted. Oh, you would say that your life is full of love and warmth? Li Guqiu is being used as a bargaining chip by her family to be engaged to a man like me. Is it very warm? Ning Shu curled his lips. Don't you know that the economic foundation determines the superstructure? Ladies, only with enough capital can one have unlimited possibilities. Pei Meng was so angry at Ning Shu that her face turned red. Then you can spend the rest of your life with your money. Ning Shu, okay, I'm better off living with money than with Li Guqiu. Money can at least give me what I want. She was so stingy when she didn't have money to buy things. Was she really happy? Pei Meng couldn't find a reason to refute Ning Shu, so she could only scold, vulgar. Ning Shu, you are noble and pure. You don't need to eat, drink, shit, or sleep. Little fairies, if you have nothing to do, please leave my house. Originally, the two of them had come to criticize Ning Shu, but after being questioned by him, they were speechless. They had to admit that the Zhang family was in the dominant position and they were indeed in the wrong. Li Guqiu felt that this matter was getting more and more difficult to deal with. She looked at the man in front of her. Obviously, this man was serious. There was no flattery or fawning on him. In the past, Zhang Tianbao had always fawned over her. He liked to give her some expensive gifts, such as diamonds and jewelry. She didn't like these things, so she threw them aside and never wore them. She only felt disgusted when someone she hated tried to fawn on her. It had nothing to do with the value of these things. Li Guqiu said in a cold voice, Zhang Tianbao, can this matter be delayed? Ning Shu spread his hands and said, sure, how long do you want to delay it? 1 year, 2 years, or 4 or 5 years? I'm still waiting to carry on the family line. You've wasted so much of my youth. Can you afford to pay for it? Men also had youth. Pei Meng also wanted to roll her eyes. Your youth was nothing. Li Guqiu was really pitiful. After becoming Zhang Tianbao's fiancée, she couldn't fall in love and didn't enjoy the nourishment of love. Then she had to marry Zhang Tianbao, a good-for-nothing. Speaking of which, Li Guqiu was more disadvantaged, okay? Ning Shu seemed to see through Pei Meng's thoughts and said, can you blame me for this? Even if there was no Zhang family, there was the Wang family and the Sun family. If you want to blame someone, blame Li Guqiu's family. I'm the most innocent person. Pei Meng felt that something was wrong, but she couldn't refute it. Li Guqiu also felt that she couldn't talk to Zhang Tianbao anymore. If she continued, it would be all her fault. Li Guqiu said, Zhang Tianbao, I'm not ready to get married yet. Can you wait a little longer? Ning Shu's face was melancholy. He raised his big flat face and said, How long do you have to wait? 3 years and 3 years. How many years are there? People can't afford to be destroyed. Pei Meng almost vomited in disgust. She pulled Li Guqiu and was about to leave. Let's go. Guqiu, don't talk to him. Ning Shu watched the two beautiful girls leave. He stood up and picked up the talisman on the ground. This talisman paper was taken from Pei Meng. She had to understand the means of Jinyang and what the means of a fortune teller in this world were. Ning Shu opened the folded talisman paper. There was a golden talisman on the talisman paper. Ning Shu's fingers followed it. He found that this talisman was really not simple. It didn't seem to be spiritual energy, but formed an inexplicable resonance with the magnetic field between heaven and earth. There was also a feeling of communicating with the will of heaven and earth. Using the power of heaven and earth. Well, the fortune tellers in this world were really strong. Ning Shu then began to exercise his body. At the same time, he practiced peerless martial arts and absorbed a little bit of spiritual energy. Pei Meng pulled Li Guqiu out of the villa. When they got into the car, Pei Meng said to Li Guqiu, I'll take you to see the master. The master is really omnipotent. The talisman she gave me. Well, where did my talisman go? Pei Meng felt around her neck and her face changed. Without the talisman, why do I feel that the whole world is not safe? There was a sense of security only with the talisman. Since the last car accident, Pei Meng was full of worship for the master. She looked like a crazy fan. After the car accident, the words on the copy disappeared. Pei Meng pestered the master to draw a new one, but now the talisman paper was gone. Help, the talisman paper was gone. The talisman paper given by the master was gone. Help me find it. Chapter 33:11. Li Guqiu saw that Pei Meng was a little flustered and told her to calm down. Pei Meng, you can't believe these crooked practices. No, it's true. Believe me. I survived such a serious car accident. Otherwise, you wouldn't be able to see me. Pei Meng was a little angry. Okay, I'll listen to you. Let's go see the master you mentioned. Li Guqiu didn't believe her at all. She said this because she didn't want to ruin their relationship because of an outsider. You'll be right if you believe me. Pei Meng took Li Guqiu to a small alley where Jin Yang's rented house was. As soon as they arrived in the capital, they found a house to stay in. In the business of fortune-telling, money came quickly. A single order could be tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, or hundreds of thousands. Since ancient times, people with special abilities had always served the nobles and officials. These rich and powerful people didn't lack money at all. Li Guqiu looked around and frowned. She didn't believe this so-called master more and more. Especially when she opened the door and saw a young man. There was also the smell of instant noodles in the room. Her impression of him dropped even more. The richer they were, the more superstitious they were. The Li family would also invite some masters to check the feng shui. This person was completely different from those masters. He was too young. Pei Meng hurriedly introduced him to Jin Yang. This is my best friend, Li Guqiu. Recently, she has encountered some trouble. Help her take a look. Jin Yang looked at Li Guqiu. Before, he thought Pei Meng was very cute. Now that he saw Li Guqiu, who was like a snow lotus, he suddenly felt shocked. Come in. What do you want to see? Jin Yang continued to eat his instant noodles. He didn't look like a master at all. Pei Meng told Jin Yang about this matter. Li Guqiu couldn't even get a word in. To be honest, it was very awkward to tell such a thing to someone she had never met before. Jin Yang looked at Li Guqiu. You have a fiancé. There was undisguised pity on his face. His eyes were full of admiration. Li Guqiu blushed under Jin Yang's gaze. She was angry at his lack of manners. Her heartbeat was a little irregular. Although this man looked young, had a crew cut, looked rustic, and the clothes on his body were cheap, but if one looked carefully, they would find that he was quite good-looking. Moreover, there was an indescribable aura around him, which made him look different from the rest. It was probably confidence, a confident man. Pei Meng said with grief and indignation, Gu Qiu's fiancé is not a good person. Pei Meng recounted how Zhang Tianbao was a spoiled brat, how he used his power to bully others, and how he was a good-for-nothing. She succeeded in making Jin Yang look at Li Guqiu with pity. A delicate flower being destroyed just like that, how heartbreaking it was. Especially when Li Guqiu was still pretending to be strong, but her melancholy temperament had already betrayed her. While Pei Meng was complaining to Jin Yang and talking bad about Ning Shu behind his back, Ning Shu was crying to his father. She clung to Mr. Zhang's thigh and said that she was just testing him about the marriage. Mr. Zhang was furious. Li Guqiu came to her home and asked her to postpone the marriage. Dad, do you still want to have a grandchild? I can't get married, so what grandchild do you have? They're just trying to keep our family in suspense. Why do they still think that our family owes the Li family? Back then, when we were negotiating, the Li family didn't agree. Why does it seem like our Zhang family coerced the Li family? Dad, don't cry. How old are you? Don't you feel ashamed? Mr. Zhang was also angry, but when he saw Ning Shu's unmotivated look, he became even angrier. He was controlled by a girl. The Li family is taking advantage of you because you're useless. If you're successful, those girls will swarm to you. I'll work hard. Li Guqiu is just relying on the fact that I like her. Now that I don't like her anymore, she's nothing. Ning Shu wiped her snot and tears. Dad, I've been bullied. The Li family doesn't want to marry me, but they also don't want to break off the engagement. It's very humiliating to be broken off by someone like me. Mr. Zhang kicked Ning Shu. Get out. I'll deal with this matter. Thank you, Dad. Ning Shu quickly got out of the way and turned back to Mr. Zhang. Dad, can you hire a physiognomist? Mr. Zhang asked casually, why do you need a physiognomist? A physiognomist was needed for demolition, marriage, and so on to pray for blessings and exorcism. Of course, he wanted to understand the physiognomy of this world. But generally speaking, physiognomists had their own sects and all kinds of methods were used to save their lives. It was a secret. Generally, the physiognomists wouldn't give it to others. Unless it was a master and disciple. Could it be that he had to worship a master in this world? Ning Shu said, I want to learn the physiognomy. What's the point of learning these things? Learn how to manage a company. Mr. Zhang said. It was strange. These rich and powerful people respected these capable people. But strictly speaking, these people were low-class people and wouldn't learn. Ning Shu said, I'm suddenly interested in this kind of thing. I feel it's very mysterious. I want to learn. Dad, help me find a master. In the future, I won't go out to eat, drink, and play. I'll learn the physiognomy from the master. When old man Zhang heard this, he thought for a while. Instead of letting this wastrel waste his money on his friends, he might as well hire a physiognomist to help him. He had to go out and play. Then he thought of something. He shook his head and said, you can't learn it. If you learn it, you will lose something. Love, family, or disability. In fact, ordinary people wouldn't be willing to do it unless they had no other choice. Of course, there were people who pursued the high realm of physiognomy. If this brat learned the physiognomy, it would be his family that would be in trouble. If he was destined to be alone, his family would be in trouble. Ning Shu was speechless. I won't learn it. I just want to understand it. I won't reveal the secrets of heaven. Nothing will happen. Don't worry, Ning Shu said to Mr. Zhang. Can you find a physiognomist to tell me about the physiognomy world? First of all, she had to understand the power system of this world. She was afraid that she would use the Mao Shan technique. If the opponent's power system was different, it would be like fighting air. It would be useless. Mr. Zhang looked at Ning Shu suspiciously. Why do you suddenly want to know about these things? Ning Shu said, because I want to know. I'm a little curious. I met a fortune teller who was quite accurate. He said that Li Guqiu and I were not fated. Even if we were, it would be an ill-fated relationship. And he told me everything that happened to me since I was a child. It's amazing. Ning Shu looked as if he had never seen the world. Chapter 33:12. Old man Zhang knew that his son had met a real physiognomist and not a swindler. Some powerful physiognomists could tell what a person had gone through just by looking at their face. This kid must not have gone through any more magical means. Those powerful physiognomists were still called immortals. Moreover, there were many hidden families among the physiognomist families. Old man Zhang said, if you meet such people, it's best not to offend them. It's easy to bring trouble to the family. Some physiognomists had evil intentions. If someone offended them unintentionally, they would use some means to kill the person. Physiognomists had 100 ways to kill the person without being able to find out. Ning Shu nodded obediently. Dad, don't worry. I won't offend any physiognomists. What if something happens? Of course, old man Zhang understood Ning Shu's meaning. Be careful. Don't offend some strange people. There are all kinds of people in the capital. Don't bully others. In ancient times, a brick could hit a third-rank official in the capital. It was the same now. Maybe he saw an ordinary old man practicing Tai Chi in the garden. Maybe he was a powerful person with an unfathomable family background. Of course I know who I can offend and who I don't dare to offend. The client had been living a good life for so many years. It was because he didn't cause trouble for the Zhang family. Otherwise, his legs would have been broken or he would have been thrown out of the country. It wasn't easy to be a rich man's son. He had to know who he couldn't offend and who he could. Only then could he ensure that he wouldn't offend someone he couldn't afford to offend. Dad! Ning Shu shouted. Can you help me find one? It can't be too powerful. Can you give me something or tell me something about the world of physiognomists? The client wasn't a physiognomist and didn't know much about the physiognomist community. But now, Ning Shu needed to know more. I know. I'll help you find one. Oh right, I've thought about the Li family. If you really don't want to marry Li Guqiu, I'll arrange a new wife for you. Ning Shu, let's talk about the wife later. Ning Shu said. Weren't you very anxious? Why aren't you anxious now? I have more important things to do, so let's talk about this later. I've been hurt, and I need time to heal. Am I really that bad? You're not bad. You're just very bad. You should learn a little. You're almost 30 years old. You can't be like this for the rest of your life. Ning Shu just nodded. Father Zhang's words went in one ear and out the other. When your son comes back, use these words to teach him a lesson. Old man Zhang acted quickly and soon found a physiognomist with average skills. A powerful physiognomist would never teach his son. Zhang Tianbao's father knew very well what kind of person Zhang Tianbao was. Those fortune tellers would definitely think that he was insulting them. Those who were too weak would not know much about the world of fortune tellers. Therefore, middle-level fortune tellers were the most suitable. This fortune teller was a middle-aged man. He looked very burly and had explosive muscles. He didn't look like a fortune teller at all. He looked more like a blacksmith. Ning Shu's attitude towards this fortune-teller was very good. He asked some things about the world of fortune-tellers and the magic tools that they often used. Fortune-tellers could also brew magic tools, just like how Buddhists could consecrate and make some Bodhi relics, which could also have a protective effect. This fortune-teller was paid. Since his employer asked him questions, he would naturally answer them. He told Ning Shu everything he knew. Ning Shu had a lot of questions. He wanted to squeeze the man dry. Ning Shu also had some understanding of the source of power for fortune-tellers. According to this fortune-teller, fortune-tellers absorbed the energy of heaven and earth. As for what kind of energy it was spiritual qi. Then, they used spiritual qi to communicate with heaven and earth and draw talismans to make magic tools. A magic tool with spiritual qi was very expensive. Fortune-tellers were a very profitable profession. However, the prerequisite was that you had to be very strong. Then, money would flow in like water. What made Ning Shu more puzzled was that the power system of this world was not the same as the Maoshan technique. The Maoshan technique used spiritual qi and various tools to draw talismans. The talismans of this world not only used spiritual qi, but also communicated with heaven and earth. Then, the energy of heaven and earth was compressed on a piece of paper. It was very complicated. Now, a talisman paper, especially a talisman drawn by a master, could be sold at a high price. Ning Shu began to learn how to draw talismans from this fortune-teller. The fortune-teller said awkwardly, "With my strength, I can't draw talismans completely yet." There was a strict watershed for fortune-tellers. Being able to draw talismans was a qualitative leap. Communicating with the energy of heaven and earth was not something that ordinary people could do. If you really want to learn, you'd better find a master. I can't teach you this. Ning Shu said, then tell me the principle of drawing talismans. I'll try to draw it myself. With his previous experience of drawing talismans, he should be able to learn everything. There were always similarities. Okay, I only have theoretical things. You can figure it out yourself. The fortune-teller took the money, so he naturally had to accompany this young master. It was probably because of the novelty. After a while, the popularity would die down. He felt that it was fun, but he was paid. The watershed for fortune-tellers' strength was very big, and the watershed for their income was also very big. For a fortune-teller like him, who had some strength but was not very strong, it was not easy for him to make a living. It was good that he was paid. Ning Shu flipped through the information given by the fortune-teller. Then, he used his hand as a pen and drew on the talisman paper. What was amazing was that there was no paint on his fingers, but there was a golden mark when he drew. However, halfway through Ning Shu's drawing, he felt that it was very difficult. His hands kept shaking, as if he had a stroke. There was some kind of force suppressing his hands, making it impossible for him to continue drawing. This was probably the so-called energy of heaven and earth. The energy was divided into good and bad. The talisman condensed some energy that was beneficial to people and stayed on the body. Then, it would be protected by this invisible energy. However, since it was energy, it would definitely dissipate. In some dangerous situations, this kind of energy would resist the bad energy and eliminate some negative energy. The half-drawn talisman also collapsed, and the golden words that were printed on the duplicated talisman paper disappeared completely. It was really not easy. This kind of compressed energy of heaven and earth for one's own use was very rare in other worlds. The fortune-teller's development was very good. He wondered who created it. Other than losing weight, the damn fatty Ning Shu stayed at home to draw talismans. He followed the fortune-teller's method of absorbing energy and practiced it repeatedly. Ning Shu's days were very fulfilling, but the Li family was not very happy. Chapter 33:13. The Zhang family wanted to withdraw their investment. They wanted to withdraw the money that they had invested and the interest. Since it was an investment, it should be a profit. They wanted to take back the capital and interest. Although the Li family had survived the crisis, they would still be in a crisis if they were to withdraw a lot of money. Li Guqiu's heart was numb. She watched her father get angry with her. What are you doing? Why did you let the Zhang family withdraw their investment? Did you anger Zhang Tianbao? Do you know what will happen to the company if the Zhang family withdraws their investment? You live off the family and enjoy the wealth. When it's time to contribute to the family, you can't even do such a small thing. You can't even handle a rich playboy like Zhang Tianbao. What use do you have? Li Guqiu's father scolded her. Li Guqiu's face was numb. She didn't say a word and just let her father scold her. At this moment, she remembered Zhang Tianbao's words. She suddenly realized that she had no economic foundation and no stinky money. She had to break her bones for stinky money. She didn't have a warm family in life. For a few stinky money, her father was scolding her because of that stinky money. People were born without financial freedom. What kind of freedom was there to talk about? If the Li family had money, she would have money too. Her father wouldn't have arranged her life. There were many things in life. She had money, talent, and ability. But she had nothing. Other than being born in a good family and not having to worry about food, she had nothing. How sad. Go and apologize to Zhang Tianbao. Tell the Zhang family not to withdraw their investment. Li Guqiu's father ordered her. Li Guqiu looked at her father. I don't want to. I don't want to marry Zhang Tianbao. I don't want to be his wife. I'd rather die than marry Zhang Tianbao. Presumptuous. Li Guqiu's father directly slapped his daughter's face, directly slapping Li Guqiu's face to the side, and half of her face swelled up at a speed visible to the naked eye. It's not up to you to decide. Do you want the Li family to go bankrupt? What good will it do you if the Li family goes bankrupt? Don't forget that you're from the Li family too. You're about to go bankrupt, and you're still thinking about whether you're willing or not. If you go bankrupt, do you think you can still shop in peace? Do you think you can still have beautiful clothes and expensive jewelry without doing anything every day? Stop dreaming. Li Guqiu's heart was crushed into mud. Money, money, it was all for money. However, it was impossible to do so without money. Mr. Li, it's really ugly to hit a girl like this, especially your daughter. Jin Yang walked into the living room and said to Li Guqiu's father. Pei Meng was standing next to Jin Yang. Pei Meng quickly walked over and asked, Guqiu, are you okay? Li Guqiu shook her head. It's fine. How can you be fine? Look at your swollen face. Pei Meng felt wronged, so she said to Li Guqiu's father, Uncle Li, why did you hit Guqiu? You know what kind of person Zhang Tianbao is. He let such a good person like Guqiu marry such a person, and he doesn't even allow Guqiu to have any feelings. Li Guqiu's father looked at the rustic Jin Yang and asked unkindly, Who are you? How did you break into my house? Please get out, or I'll call the security. Jin Yang saw the palm print on Li Guqiu's face, and a trace of hostility flashed in his eyes. He sneered and said, Are you sure you want to drive me away? If it wasn't for Li Guqiu, I wouldn't have come here. Jin Yang looked at the layout of the villa and snorted. No wonder the Li family is always useless. Even if there's no problem with the ancestral grave, the furnishings in the house are all kinds of evil. Serves them right. You. Li Guqiu's father was mocked by a young boy. He was already in a bad mood, but now he was even angrier. A country bumpkin who came from God knows where dared to criticize their family's affairs. What the hell? Don't worry, I'll leave immediately. I don't want to stay in such a haunted house any longer. Jin Yang didn't have the virtue of respecting the old and loving the young. Except for the old man at home, Jin Yang's attitude toward others was naturally bad. Although the Li family's business always had problems, Li Guqiu's father was also a man of business. Hearing the young man's words, which were all for Li Guqiu's sake, he was suddenly angry and amused. A country bumpkin actually wanted to covet his daughter. He immediately questioned Li Guqiu. Did you fool around outside? Did Zhang Tianbao know about it, so the Zhang family wants to withdraw their investment? He probably didn't expect that his daughter, who had always been obedient, would find a man, and such a rustic man. It seemed that he was poor. For such a man, Li Guqiu offended the Zhang family. Li Guqiu looked very smart. How could she do such a thing? Li Guqiu's heart had been numb from the pain. For her father's words, she said lightly, I didn't. Then tell me what's going on. Zhang Tianbao was stable before. Why did he suddenly collapse? Do you know the situation of the company now? It's drained. How did I give birth to such a rebellious daughter? Li Guqiu's father raised his hand to hit her, but Jin Yang grabbed his wrist. Jin Yang looked at him coldly. What's the point of hitting a woman's man? If you weren't Guqiu's father, I would kill you. You, Jin Yang's face was cold. He took out the talisman. The talisman flew toward Li Guqiu's father out of thin air and directly penetrated his body. Before he could react, he felt that something invisible was strangling his neck, making him unable to breathe. Li Guqiu's father rolled on the ground with a painful expression. His hands desperately scratched his neck, and there were streaks of blood on his neck. He was scratched out by himself. His face was flushed, and even his tongue was sticking out. Gradually, his face began to turn purple, which was a symptom of extreme hypoxia. Li Guqiu was frightened and quickly begged Jin Yang. Stop, stop, he's my father. Jin Yang withdrew. Li Guqiu's father began to breathe and cough violently. His expression was painful, and his tears were physiological tears. This time, I'm just teaching you a lesson. Even if you're Guqiu's father, I won't be polite to you. Li Guqiu is your daughter. What's wrong with bullying a woman? In response to Jin Yang's words was a series of coughs. The arrogant man was now very embarrassed. He stood up with the help of the sofa. He looked at Jin Yang with fear in his eyes. Obviously, he was frightened by Jin Yang's means. He didn't expect such a young person to be a physiognomist. Suddenly, he didn't dare to be presumptuous in front of him. /BK Chapter 33:14. Jin Yang said coldly, now we can talk properly. Don't fight. Li Guqiu's father was embarrassed. Don't fight. He said to Li Guqiu, why didn't you tell me that you know such a powerful master? Li Guqiu felt a little sad. She just said, we just met by chance. Her father was like this. He only cared about benefits. She had no weight in his heart. When he needed her, she was a good daughter. When he didn't need her, he ignored her. If Jin Yang hadn't appeared, today's matter wouldn't have been settled so easily. She saw the scratches on her father's neck and his face was red and purple. His face was still congested. How embarrassing. Her father, who was showing off just now, looked as if a basin of water had been poured on his head. Li Guqiu looked at Jin Yang with eyes full of dependence and gratitude. There was someone who would protect her and appear to save her at a critical moment. Wasn't that what she wanted in life? What's going on? Old Master Li came downstairs and looked at the situation in the living room with his walking stick. Dad. Old Master Li looked at Jin Yang, narrowed his eyes and asked, are you the famous Master Jin Yang? Jin Yang's reputation in the capital had soared. Old Master Li said politely, Master, what can I do for you? Jin Yang sat on the sofa unceremoniously. I'm here to see Li Guqiu. Li Guqiu is my sister. Don't bully her because she's alone. What alone? Li Guqiu was a descendant of the Li family. How could she be alone? Old Master Li said with a smile, it's Guqiu's fortune to know you. But my granddaughter's life is not good. Sigh, it's been hard on her for the Li family. Old Master Li was much more sophisticated than his son. He wouldn't speak harshly. He was playing the family card. When Old Master Li said this, Li Guqiu's expression immediately changed. She said to Old Master Li, Grandpa, it's not hard. I don't have a hard life. Jin Yang pursed his lips. This old fox was relying on him to value Li Guqiu. Well, for Li Guqiu's sake, he would help the Li family. Give it to me. Jin Yang reached out his hand and said. Old Master Li was stunned and asked, what do you want? Of course I have to pay you for helping me, Jin Yang said. Okay, give the master a check, Mr. Li said to his assistant. No, it's a friendly price. In our line of work, we can't not charge. 1 yuan. Just give me a coin, Jin Yang said. The Li family was stunned for a moment. Li Guqiu's face became a little red, and she shyly lowered her head. Pei Meng nudged her best friend with her elbow. Look at how good the master is to you. Back then, I wasn't someone who could solve my problems with a single coin. Don't talk nonsense. Li Guqiu said in embarrassment. Hee hee. Pei Meng raised her eyebrows and smiled ambiguously. Stop fooling around. Give the master $1. Old Master Li followed the good advice and asked his assistant to give him $1. Jin Yang took the money, threw the coin, and caught it. He stood up and said, put away these paintings. What world-famous paintings? They were all painted by the deceased. They have the spirit of a painter. Also, put away these strange decorations. Even if you want to put them up, put up some auspicious ones to ward off evil. Didn't I pay the fortune teller enough? Why is the feng shui so messy? Jin Yang couldn't help but want to complain. Li Guqiu's father couldn't help but say, the money you charge is also very little. To be honest, only 1 yuan was more unsettling. People's inherent thinking was that good things were expensive. Old Master Li didn't say anything and asked the servants to move the things. At the same time, Jin Yang set up a Dharma array for the villa, which could collect the surrounding fortune qi. The imperial capital was a place covered by purple energy. This magic array could absorb the purple energy and change the Li family's fortune. To be honest, such a magic array required a lot of money. Not many fortune tellers could set it up. To be able to get so many things for $1, the Li family must have made a profit. Li Guqiu followed behind Jin Yang and looked at him from time to time. Jin Yang was very serious when he was working. He was full of masculine beauty. A serious man was the most handsome. Jin Yang felt Li Guqiu's gaze and turned to look at her. Li Guqiu immediately looked away in panic and didn't know what to do. Jin Yang suddenly smiled. Do you think I'm very handsome? Have you fallen in love with me? Smooth talker. Hurry up and do it. You've taken the money. Li Guqiu said in panic. She couldn't even straighten her tongue and almost got bitten. Jin Yang said to Old Master Li, the feng shui of the house is almost done. There are still some details left. I'll make a list for you. Now, we're going to the ancestral grave to take a look. Ancestral grave. Li Guqiu's father shook his head. That won't do. Ancestral grave can't be touched. Ancestral graves were very important, especially when there were so many fortune tellers. If the ancestral graves were tampered with, it would be a disaster for the descendants. Li Guqiu's father didn't trust Jin Yang, especially when he was insulted by a young boy and even fought with him. It was impossible for Li Guqiu's father to not have a knot in his heart. He was very unhappy with Jin Yang, especially when this boy was too obvious about his intentions towards his daughter. He had seduced his daughter and now offended the Zhang family. That was why such a situation happened. Old Master Li was more decisive than his son. Okay, I'll take you to the ancestral grave. The ancestral grave of the Li family was very hidden. It looked ordinary and the feng shui around it was also very good. The feng shui is not good. No wonder there are always problems in the Li family. Jin Yang shook his head and said. That's impossible. The feng shui is checked by a master. How can there be a problem? How long has it been since your ancestral grave was taken care of? And the feng shui, mountains, rivers, and topography will change. The blessed land can't always be a blessed land, Jin Yang said. Old Master Li said, Master Jin, please help us choose a suitable place. Jin Yang snorted and looked at Li Guqiu. The meaning was too obvious. Li Guqiu's face became redder. She whispered, sorry to trouble you. Please do me a favor. Jin Yang suddenly curled the corners of his mouth. He looked a little evil and full of charm, which made people's hearts beat faster. Since I've taken the money, I'll definitely do it. I'm a very professional person. Old Master Li looked at them and thought in his heart. After that, Jin Yang found a place with good feng shui for the Li family and moved the ancestral grave. Not to mention that it could guarantee the Li family's glory for 100 years, it could be done for a few decades. As for what would happen after a few decades, it would depend on the changes in the terrain of the ancestral grave. In short, Jin Yang spent a lot of effort for Li Guqiu. Chapter 33:15. Jin Yang wanted to make it perfect. If it were someone else, the price would be sky high. But the Li family only spent 1 coin. Of course, the Li family knew the value of this. Old Master Li looked at Li Guqiu with affection in his eyes, but there was also a bit of consideration in his affection. Li Guqiu didn't feel her grandfather's eyes on her, but when she looked at Jin Yang, she was very nervous. She didn't know where to put her hands and feet, but Jin Yang liked to look at her. He deliberately picked up the food she wanted at the dinner table. This feeling made Li Guqiu very uncomfortable, but there was a faint joy that she had never enjoyed before. This was probably the feeling of being in love, the feeling of liking someone. Li Guqiu thought her life was like this, but she didn't expect Jin Yang to enter her world in such a strong way. Ning Shu had been paying attention to the Li family. He knew that Jin Yang had gone to the Li family and done a lot of things for them. After that, Jin Yang often went in and out of the Li family and became a distinguished guest of the Li family. Moreover, Jin Yang and Li Guqiu gradually became close. Jin Yang used his connections to get some business for the Li family. If someone asked Jin Yang to do something, Jin Yang would do some business for the Li family without any monetary reward. In order to be able to invite Jin Yang, these officials and nobles gave the Li family some benefits. Even if it was something that leaked out from between their fingers, it was enough to bring the Li family back to life and survive the crisis. This matter made Mr. Zhang very unhappy, and he was very unhappy. Especially when the Li family came to break off the engagement. Old Master Li came to the Zhang family in person and brought his granddaughter to break off the engagement. Since the 2 juniors were engaged to help the Li family survive the crisis, now they didn't need to be controlled by the Zhang family. Naturally, they didn't need to marry his granddaughter to Zhang Tianbao. Zhang Tianbao was a famous playboy in the capital. If his beautiful granddaughter married someone like Zhang Tianbao in the future, wouldn't Old Master Li be distressed? Of course, he would be distressed. Therefore, now there were more outstanding young people and better choices. If they didn't make a choice now, when would they make a choice? Moreover, people with eyes could see that Jin Yang helped the Li family so much because of Li Guqiu. Therefore, in order not to annoy Jin Yang and give his granddaughter happiness, it was simply killing 2 birds with 1 stone. As for the Zhang clan, it was not a big deal for them to be under the control of the Zhang clan. Li Guqiu's face was flushed as she followed her grandfather to the Zhang family. Her eyes were full of affection. It was obvious that she had fallen in love. Old man Zhang looked at the Li family and greeted them with a fake smile. Of course, he knew what the Li family meant. The Li family and old Zhang's father kept talking about this and that and didn't get to the point, which made Li Guqiu very anxious. The opportunity to change her fate was right in front of her, but what Grandpa said was nonsense. Didn't he know that she was very anxious? Putting aside the fact that it was for Jinyang, what was even more surprising was that she no longer had to be tied to Zhang Tianbao. Every day she was involved with him, she felt as if there was a rope around her neck. It was especially suffocating. Mr. Zhang said to Li Guqiu faintly, "My niece is here. I'll ask someone to call that guy down. You two are engaged, so you should meet him." Fiancé. The Li family suddenly felt disgusted. But when you withdrew the funds, why didn't you think that the two juniors were engaged? Why did you say that the two of them were engaged now? Could it be that the Zhang family still wanted to blackmail the Li family and use the money problem to blackmail the Li family? This was impossible. The Li family didn't need the Zhang family at all now. Things were different now. Perhaps the Zhang family's wishful thinking was wrong. The servant went to the gym to call Ning Shu. Ning Shu said that he got it, took a shower, and went downstairs. In the living room, he saw the Li family gathered and then looked at Li Guqiu's appearance. Ning Shu was actually very happy in his heart. Finally, he could cut ties with the Li family. If they wanted to rely on Jinyang, they could rely on Jinyang. And this time, he didn't know if he could rely on Jinyang. "Come, Tianbao, your fiancé is here to see you." Old man Zhang waved to Ning Shu. The Li family looked at Ning Shu with some surprise. Their eyes were full of doubts. This person is Zhang Tianbao. It's impossible. Isn't Zhang Tianbao a damn fatty? Although the person in front of them was fat, he was definitely not that damn fatty, okay? It was probably because he had lost weight. The outline of his face was also visible, unlike before when he was so fat that even his neck couldn't be seen. The current Zhang Tianbao couldn't be considered fat, only strong. Ning Shu, who had lost weight, was somewhat similar to old man Zhang. Probably because Zhang Tianbao's image was too unbearable, too fat and bloated, it caused the Li family to be surprised when they saw Ning Shu. Li Guqiu looked at Ning Shu in a daze, but then she moved her gaze away. When she heard that Zhang Tianbao wanted to lose weight, she just snorted. How could a person who was used to eating, drinking, and having fun be ruthless to lose weight? But during this period of time, it seemed that the weight loss was effective. Zhang Tianbao was a little different. But when she thought of Jinyang, Li Guqiu's face flushed. Even if Zhang Tianbao had changed, Jinyang was the most different. The Li family's surprised look made old man Zhang very happy. They always said that his son was useless and was a hedonistic son. Now that his son's image had changed, it was very satisfying to shock these people. Moreover, his son, who had lost weight, inherited his handsomeness. Not bad, not bad. When he was completely thin in the future, would he be afraid that he couldn't find a good girl? Finding a good girl was a matter of minutes. He didn't need to worry about money. His son could have any kind of wife he wanted. Ning Shu sat down and asked with a well-behaved look, "Dad, what's the matter? Isn't this the future father-in-law's family?" "He asked you to come down and receive him," old man Zhang said. Ning Shu looked at old man Li and said in surprise, "Oh, old man, why did you come to see me personally?" "I can't afford it. I really can't afford it." Old man Li's face twitched. He wanted to break off the engagement, but he couldn't say it. Li Guqiu next to him was so anxious that her eyes were misty. She looked at her grandfather pleadingly. "Don't shrink back at this time. Now that Jinyang was here, he really didn't need to rely on the Zhang family anymore. Li Guqiu's father was more outspoken. He directly said to Ning Shu, Tianbao, we are not destined to be father and son-in-law. Ning Shu asked with a blank face, why? Why are we not destined to be father and son-in-law? When I marry Guqiu in the future, I will also call you dad. We will be a family in the future. Don't be so polite. Ahem. Seeing his son like this, old man Zhang wanted to laugh, but he held back. He put his fist to his lips and coughed. He couldn't bear to look at his son directly. Chapter 33:16. Dad. Li Guqiu looked at her father pleadingly. Old Mr. Li said, Tianbao, there are some things, sigh. Old Mr. Li looked as if he was Tianbao's biological grandfather. He said helplessly, Tianbao, you can't get married. Guqiu can't marry you. Ning Shu looked as if he had been struck by lightning. He was dumbstruck. What are you talking about? Why can't we get married? Ning Shu sounded like he was about to cry. I've always treated Guqiu as my wife. You lied to me. You said Li Guqiu was my wife and now you're saying we can't get married. No, I want to marry Li Guqiu. If we can't get married, I don't want to live anymore. Ning Shu threw a tantrum like a child. I must marry Li Guqiu. I've waited for so long and you told me this. What kind of person do you think I am? How can you bully me like this? The Li family was speechless. Li Guqiu was about to have a stroke because of Ning Shu's helplessness. You didn't say that in the beginning. Previously, he looked like he didn't care about marrying her and even said that it wasn't only her. Why was he purposely making things difficult for her now? What did I say? You're my fiancé. I treat you as my partner for life. We're not even married yet and you want to dump me? Is the Li family bullying me like this? Although I'm a playboy, I've never done anything wrong to Li Guqiu. My family is rich. How can I get married? God, I eat, drink, and play because I want to be happy. Am I wrong to want to be happy? I'm getting married to live a better life. I'm already living a good life. Why should I get married? To tire myself to death. Ning Shu's words made Li Guqiu explode. You're useless. You eat, drink, and play. How can you be so reasonable? Finding such an excuse for yourself was shameless and despicable. He had no sense of shame or honor. It was embarrassing for a man to be like this. Ning Shu continued, Li Guqiu, as a woman, did I ask you to enter? Did I ask you to become a woman who would shock the whole world? I didn't ask you to do that, so why do you have so many requirements for me? The money at home is enough for you to buy and eat whatever you want. This was a one-sided request. You had to do whatever you wanted, and Li Guqiu didn't need to do anything at all. Li Guqiu was said to be a hedonistic son of rich parents, but in fact, Li Guqiu was also dependent on her family, and then her fate was arranged by her family. Both of them were of the same nature. No one was superior to the other. Since you didn't want to marry me, you should have stood up bravely and left the family to earn money for yourself. That's a woman with ambition. Why couldn't you do it? You are really a weak and incompetent woman. People were all the same, so why should they differentiate between men and women? Li Guqiu sat in her boudoir, demanding her man to do what he wanted. Did she think that she was a young lady from an ancient family? What era was this? You. Li Guqiu's face turned red because of Ning Shu's sarcasm. She shouldn't have followed him. Every time she talked to Zhang Tianbao, she felt that Zhang Tianbao's words were like a knife with a barb, stabbing into her heart. He tore off her pride. He broke her bones inch by inch. That was the sound of her pride cracking. Li Guqiu was speechless after being lectured by a playboy. Li Guqiu was angry and annoyed. A kind of anger and hatred towards Ning Shu grew in her heart. She was an excellent person. How could she not be angry after being insulted by such a person? Zhang Tianbao's mouth twitched. Listening to his son's crooked ideas, he was speechless. Li Guqiu rarely got angry, but at this moment, she yelled at Ning Shu sharply, "Since you don't want to marry me so much and think that I am a weak and incompetent woman, then break off the engagement." She finally said it. Ning Shu shook his head, "If I don't break off the engagement, I am a playboy. You are weak and incompetent. You sacrificed yourself for the sake of the whole family. You moved yourself to tears. We are a match made in heaven." She just didn't have the confidence. She had to find a reason to make herself feel better. "And when I slim down, I'll also be very handsome, enough to match your beautiful face. Who is a match made in heaven with you?" Li Guqiu was really angry. Her face was full of anger, and her face was red. "Well, you have been wronged," Ning Shu said. "I will not agree to break off the engagement. For so many years, I have spent so much time, money, and thought on you. But there is no return at all. How can I be reconciled with that?" Li Guqiu was really helpless. Her strength seemed to be taken away. "Zhang Tianbao, I really don't love you. Feelings can't be forced. A melon picked by force is not sweet." Ning Shu said, "It's okay. A melon picked by force is not sweet, but it will quench my thirst. Have you ever thought about how many people will laugh at me if you break off the engagement with me? Originally, no one was optimistic about you and me. Now that we have broken up, so many people will laugh at us. Who will compensate me for my mental loss?" Li Guqiu didn't want to talk to Zhang Tianbao anymore. She begged Old Master Li, "Grandpa." Old Master Li said to Old Master Zhang, "Since the two families are not fated, then forget it. Marriage is not making enemies. Two children like this, who knows what will happen after marriage?" Ning Shu shook his head, "I will definitely not break off the engagement. Don't think that I don't know. Now that Li Guqiu has found someone she likes, she wants to kick me away. What will happen to my time, money and energy over the years?" Li Guqiu said, "I don't like anyone. Don't talk nonsense and ruin my reputation." Ning Shu pursed his lips. It was not shameful to meet someone she liked. Ruin her reputation? Who didn't have an ex-girlfriend or ex-boyfriend these days? "Girl, I'm afraid you are still living in a feudal dynasty." Old Master Li understood and said, "Of course we can't break off the engagement like this. Speaking of which, the children of the two families are not fated to be together. Naturally, we have to compensate Tianbao." Ning Shu lifted his eyelids and said, "You are talking about compensation. What compensation? There has to be something. When the time comes and you don't admit it, who will I look for?" The Li family's breath was suddenly stuck in their throats. They were so suffocated that their lungs were about to explode. They had never seen such a shameless person. The woman's side didn't ask for any compensation, and it was not good for Li Guqiu's reputation. Zhang Tianbao was a man. Why would he care about his reputation? Ning Shu said to Old Master Zhang, "Dad, I'm too sad. I don't want to talk. After a while, I will make a list. If I don't see these things in front of me, I will definitely not break off the engagement. When the time comes, whether you are willing or not, we will get married/BK." Chapter 33:17. Li Guqiu was so angry that her eyes were filled with tears. She just wanted to leave this shameless man as soon as possible. Scumbag. It was as tasteless as asking his girlfriend to give him a breakup fee after breaking up. They couldn't agree on a time to break off the engagement. The Li family also knew that the Zhang family wanted to cut a piece of meat from them. What was this? It was clearly their daughter who broke off the engagement, but they still had to compensate the man. Exim. But if they didn't compensate, then that bastard Zhang Tianbao would get a beautiful wife for nothing. No matter what, the Zhang family wouldn't lose out. Fuck, it was really infuriating. Especially the various items on the list, it simply made the Li family's liver ache. It was very painful. Li Guqiu's father held the list and asked Li Guqiu, "Did you really accept so many things?" I didn't notice. She didn't care at all what Zhang Tianbao gave her. I said before, don't accept things, but you said that Zhang Tianbao is my fiancé, so I should accept the things he gave me. Otherwise, the Zhang family will be unhappy. She wanted to throw Zhang Tianbao's things out directly, but the people around her advised her to accept the things. It was up to her whether she used them or not. She could just throw them aside. After all, they were engaged. If she threw the things out directly, it would be a slap to the Zhang family's face. If that wasn't the case, would it be necessary for her to accept such an annoying thing? Why were they blaming her for accepting the things now? Li Guqiu was very angry. The matter of breaking off the engagement had not been resolved. Now the Li family was going to suffer a loss again. Now, her family was blaming her for the loss. This was her family. Old Master Li said, "It's all like this. It's useless to blame anyone. Either get married or give the things." This is the choice given by the Zhang family. Li Guqiu's father was furious. How can the Zhang family be so shameless? Why? Our daughter broke off the engagement. What loss does the Zhang family have? This was too much. Li Guqiu was very desperate. Her father was unreliable, so she looked at old Master Li. "Grandpa, I really don't want to marry Zhang Tianbao. You saw it today. Zhang Tianbao's behavior really makes people gnash their teeth." Now, Zhang Tianbao's words were piercing and uncomfortable. In the past, Zhang Tianbao was oily and disgusting. Now, he was even more disgusting. In a fight, one should never hit the face. Zhang Tianbao, on the other hand, was not stingy. He could only hit where it hurt. It was as if the clothes on her body were being stripped off piece by piece. Being exposed to the sun made her feel embarrassed and desperate. "Grandpa, I beg you, I only have one wish in my life, and that is to not marry Zhang Tianbao. I beg you, I will do whatever you want me to do in the future." Li Guqiu knelt on the ground and begged desperately. At this moment, she was like a drowning person who had grabbed onto a life-saving straw. This straw was all her hope. No one knew how much she hated Zhang Tianbao, how much she loathed him. She couldn't stand Zhang Tianbao's fiancé, let alone getting married and sleeping on the same bed as Zhang Tianbao. He was so desperate that he wished he could die. She had never felt this strongly before, but now, it was especially strong. If she really married Zhang Tianbao, she would really die. Jinyang's face became clearer and clearer in Li Guqiu's mind. That's right, Jinyang. He had met Jinyang. Old Master Li also had a headache. The Zhang family was so cunning. They used their son's unreasonable pestering to gain benefits from the Li family. It seemed that if they wanted to break off the engagement, they would have to pay a price. But was Jinyang worth the Li family's sacrifice? Not only did they have to compensate, but they also had to offend the Zhang family. The Zhang family was considered an old and wealthy family in the capital. It was a little difficult to offend such a family. This was really a difficult problem. It was very confusing. "Grandpa." Li Guqiu's face was full of despair. Old Master Li used his walking stick. "This is such a big matter. Let me think about it." "Thank you, Grandpa." Li Guqiu was already prepared to die. She knew that her family was weighing the pros and cons. Her feelings were not important at all. The most important thing was the family's interests. Li Guqiu slowly stood up from the ground. Her knees were already numb. Her father was still cursing. No one in the family cared about her feelings. Li Guqiu returned to her room. She cried and called her best friend, Pei Meng. When Pei Meng rushed over, she saw the dispirited and desperate Li Guqiu. She quickly asked, "What's wrong?" Meng, I really don't want to live anymore. What's the point of living like this?" Li Guqiu hugged Pei Meng and cried. Pei Meng was stunned. It was the first time she saw Li Guqiu so emotional. "What's going on? Tell me." Pei Meng quickly asked her. Li Guqiu sobbed and told Pei Meng what had happened. Pei Meng was so angry that her eyebrows were raised. How can Zhang Tianbao be so shameless? It was simply a new world view. What a scumbag. Of course we have to go to the master for this matter. He will definitely be able to solve it. It's best if he can teach Zhang Tianbao a lesson. Zhang Tianbao is using his family's background to do whatever he wants. Pei Meng quickly took out her phone and sent a message to Jinyang. Jinyang was very good at teaching people a lesson. She had seen Jinyang scare a hooligan to the point that he peed his pants. He was probably still traumatized even now. It would be best if Zhang Tianbao peed his pants. No, it's better not. I feel embarrassed. Li Guqiu said. What's there to be embarrassed about? Zhang Tianbao needs to be taught a lesson. This is obviously blackmail. Jinyang received Pei Meng's message and quickly rushed over. There was a murderous look between his brows. What's going on? Were the people who bullied him tired of living? Fortune tellers could take a person's head from 1,000 miles away. However, there were also rules in the world of fortune tellers. They couldn't just casually do it. But there were many ways to torture people without letting them die. Pei Meng told Jinyang the whole story. Jinyang frowned. This Zhang family is really shameless. They can either get a daughter-in-law for free or get a large sum of money as compensation. No wonder the Li family was so conflicted. They were conflicted about whether to break off the engagement and offend the Zhang family or resolutely break off the engagement. Jinyang secretly scolded the old master of the Li family for being a sly old fox. It was obvious that they wanted him to make a move and then measure his value. Jinyang was very unhappy with being schemed against like this. He was very unhappy with the Li family. However, seeing Li Guqiu so helpless and pitiful, he felt pity for her. Even if he was unhappy with the Li family, Li Guqiu was still a member of the Li family. Li Guqiu was being manipulated by her family. She was a beautiful and worried vase that was placed wherever they wanted. They didn't care about how the vase felt at all. Li Guqiu's actions made one's heart ache. Since the Li family wanted to see his power and value, he would let them see it. Chapter 33:18. Open your eyes wide and take a good look at his value. Jinyang didn't like the Zhang family or the Li family, but Li Guqiu was a member of the Li family. Jinyang was more tolerant of the Li family. Any method could scare Zhang Tianbao. If it really didn't work, he could just put a sack over Zhang Tianbao and beat him up. There were too many ways to beat up a playboy. If it really didn't work, he could start with the playboy's family. Such playboys relied on the power and protection of their family. Without a family, they had no backbone. Jinyang smoothly drew a talisman. The outline on this talisman paper was very complicated. Most importantly, the words were written in black. At first glance, it gave people a very ominous feeling. Li Guqiu and Pei Meng looked at him. Jinyang said, "This is the first time I've used this method on someone." Li Guqiu asked with a sad face, "What is this?" "It's better if you don't know." Jinyang smiled and the talisman paper shot out. "Is there anything that belongs to Zhang Tianbao? Or something that Zhang Tianbao used?" Jinyang asked. Li Guqiu shook her head. "No. She never let Zhang Tianbao into her room. How could there be anything that Zhang Tianbao used? Even if there was, she would throw it away immediately. Speaking of which, only a strange man like Jin Yang had entered her room. By the way, didn't Zhang Tianbao give you something before? Does this count as something that Zhang Tianbao used? Pei Meng asked Li Guqiu. Jin Yang's expression was ugly. You still keep the things that Zhang Tianbao gave you? Li Guqiu wanted to sew her best friend's mouth shut. I put these things aside casually. Sooner or later, I'll have to return them to Zhang Tianbao. Li Guqiu took out a cardboard box in the corner. There was some dust in the box. Are these things okay? Li Guqiu whispered as if she had done something wrong. She lowered her head and didn't dare to look at Jin Yang. Jin Yang rummaged and opened the box. Seeing that there were some dazzling things inside, he couldn't help but say, it seems that Zhang Tianbao is sincere to you. Of course not. Li Guqiu quickly retorted. Pei Meng curled her lips and said in disdain, what sincerity? It's nothing more than seeing that Guqiu is pretty and a toad lusting after a swan. If Ning Shu had heard this, he would have spat out a retort. Wasn't Jin Yang helping the Li family and fawning over Li Guqiu because of her beauty? If Li Guqiu was ugly, Jin Yang wouldn't care about her life or death. He would probably say that it was disgusting in his heart. Just like how Li Guqiu despised Zhang Tianbao. Jin Yang used Zhang Tianbao's remaining aura to lock onto Ning Shu with the talisman paper. The talisman flew out of the window and disappeared. Pei Meng asked curiously, Master, what lesson are you teaching Zhang Tianbao? Will it take his life? It was said that a physiognomist killed without leaving a trace. Now, he had witnessed it for himself. Li Guqiu also looked at Jin Yang worriedly. She hated Zhang Tianbao and wanted to tear his mouth apart. But if he died, would it implicate Jin Yang? Jin Yang said casually, he won't die. It will only make him more unlucky. Even drinking cold water will be stuck between his teeth. It would only cause his luck to gradually weaken. Without any luck, just a small accident would cause him to die. He was just that unlucky. He usually wouldn't use this kind of talisman. The old man at home said that this kind of talisman shouldn't be used easily if the other party wasn't an evil person. Zhang Tianbao could use this. Pei Meng clapped her hands. This is good. In the future, Zhang Tianbao will be an unlucky person. Li Guqiu also heaved a sigh of relief and said to Jin Yang, thank you. Jin Yang crossed his arms and looked at Li Guqiu. Then how do you plan to repay me? Hehe, I still have things to do. I'll be leaving first. Pei Meng was very observant and quickly dodged. Don't. Li Guqiu panicked and pulled Pei Meng back. If it was just the two of them, she would be even more flustered. The cold beauty melted. Not only did she melt, but the fire in her heart made her afraid. Let me treat you to a meal. Jin Yang asked, you made it? Okay, I'll make it. Li Guqiu didn't do any household chores. If she really wanted to cook, she didn't know what it would be like. Forget it, I'll do it. Jin Yang said, I'll let you have a taste of my cooking. Master, you can cook. Pei Meng looked surprised and sat down. I'm waiting to eat the master's cooking. Jin Yang walked into the kitchen and sat down with a simple bowl of noodles, but the two girls were full of praise. Master, not bad. Even if you don't want to be a master, you can still open a small noodle shop. Of course. The old man at home didn't do anything all day, and he was the one taking care of it. On the other side, Ning Shu felt an inexplicable force enter his body. When he checked, there was nothing, and there was nothing unusual. Ning Shu was a little puzzled. Could it be that Jin Yang had already made a move on him? But he didn't feel anything. However, a few days later, Ning Shu felt that something was wrong. Because he was really unlucky. Even if he walked, he would fall on flat ground. He would fall down the stairs, fall down the sand, and fall. As soon as he went out, the car would hit him. Something would hit his head from time to time. Oh, the methods of a fortune teller were unfathomable. After a little detection, there was no trace of him. Ning Shu looked at himself in the mirror. He was a little dispirited, and there was a black fog lingering between his eyebrows. If he continued to be so unlucky, he would die sooner or later. He could even choke to death when eating. He had to get rid of this thing as soon as possible. She was now shrouded in the legendary negative energy. Not only was it harmful to her body, but it would also affect her luck. Ning Shu immediately found Father Zhang and said, "Dad, I was cursed." "Father Zhang, what are you talking about?" "What? You were cursed? When did it happen?" Father Zhang immediately asked. Ning Shu put his hand on the table, but there was a raised nail on the table. Ning Shu patted it with his hand. "Oh my God, it was really painful. What happened to your hand? Why did it suddenly bleed?" Father Zhang quickly took a tissue and pressed it on his wound. "I believe it now." Father Zhang now believed that his son was cursed. He worked on this kind of table every day, and he was never pricked. In the end, his son bled when he touched it. "Don't worry, I'll find a fortune teller to see if it can be removed." Father Zhang was a little flustered. When he dialed the number, his hands were shaking. He dialed the wrong number a few times. "You brat, who did you provoke? Why would a fortune teller attack his son?" Chapter 33:19. Ning Shu pressed the wound on his hand and said, "I have an idea. The Li family hired a fortune teller to deal with me because they don't want to compensate me." "How dare the Li family? If the fortune teller was not found out, it would be fine. But if he was found out, he would not stop until he was dead." The Zhang family spent a lot of money to invite a highly respected fortune teller to take a look at Ning Shu. The fortune teller was a little old. Although he had white hair, his skin was ruddy and shiny. He looked carefully and asked with a frown, "Who did you offend? Why did they use this method to deal with you?" "Master, what's going on?" The fortune teller said, "This should be a possession charm. It's not the same as an amulet. Since there is an amulet to protect people, there must be something to cause trouble. It's invisible. It's not easy for people to be good, but it's easy for people to be unlucky. This kind of thing can magnify people's bad luck. In the end, when people have no anger, any evil and negative energy can kill them. And this kind of energy is covering you. Whether it's you or the people around you, it's not a good thing if you get involved. And it's getting bigger and bigger." Ning Shu was a little amazed. This was another kind of plague. Bad luck could be contagious. It could be transmitted to the people closest to you. Family and friends. Such a powerful thing. Ning Shu did not dare to underestimate the fortune teller in this world. He used the energy of heaven and earth to the extreme. Ning Shu hurriedly said to Mr. Zhang, "Dad, you'd better stay away from me. Don't be infected by me." It didn't matter if she was unlucky, but Mr. Zhang couldn't. If Mr. Zhang was infected, many people would be infected. Mr. Zhang was in contact with the company's employees, directors, and business partners. If they all started to be unlucky, the company would be almost finished. When people were unlucky, they would lose one thing after another. A small mistake could lead to the collapse of the company. This kind of invisible and intangible energy was a bit interesting. Ning Shu felt it was a bit like the power of witchcraft. Mr. Zhang also realized the seriousness of the matter. He hurriedly asked, "Is it easy to solve?" This was a complete curse. It's easy to cure, but it's best to find the physiognomist who cast the curse. This kind of thing can happen again. Moreover, it was impossible to guard against it, so it could only be dealt with from the source. Ning Shu rubbed his chin. Since it was negative energy, he should absorb some fortune energy to counteract it. Since ancient times, the imperial capital was the place where the Son of Heaven resided. There were dragon veins, and absorbing a bit of fortune energy could offset this type of energy. Ning Shu knew that Jin Yang had put a curse on him. Of course, he had to give Jin Yang a taste of his own medicine. Father Zhang said to the master, "Master, please help my son remove the curse." The Grand Master made his move. He drew a golden talisman and sent it into Ning Shu's body. Ning Shu immediately felt a surge of energy fusing into his body. The two forces collided within his body. Ning Shu carefully sensed the energy in his body and asked the master, "Master, do you physiognomists use charms as weapons?" "Yes, they use charms as weapons," the master said. "If you can draw charms out of thin air, you've reached another level." The curse in his body was removed. Ning Shu felt his body become lighter. Previously, he always felt that something was pressing down on him, and it was especially heavy. Now, this invisible thing had disappeared. "Thank you, Master." Ning Shu thanked the master. The master nodded elegantly. Finding the culprit is the most important thing. After that, Father Zhang transferred a large sum of money to the master. After a period of torment, Ning Shu finally understood the source of the power of a physiognomist. It was similar to the nature of witchcraft. Witchcraft could curse and also pray for blessings. There were 3,000 great paths that led to the great path. Physiognomists walked the path of witchcraft. Previously, they had comprehended the witchcraft law. After figuring out some things, the mysterious veil of the physiognomist was removed. Father Zhang looked at Ning Shu and asked, "Who do you think did this to you?" "Dad, don't tell me you don't know that the Li family has been on good terms with a physiognomist recently. Now, the Li family is still wavering. If I die, I don't have to marry or give money. What a good thing." Father Zhang sneered. Then, he thought of the physiognomist. This person is troublesome. According to the master, he should be a powerful person. Ordinary people can't use such methods. It seems that our family needs a permanent physiognomist. Ning Shu stretched his body. "Dad, it's up to you. I have to go on a diet." "Damn brat, such a serious matter." Ning Shu returned to his room. His face darkened. He sat cross-legged on the bed and began to use witchcraft. He wanted to let Jin Yang taste the power of the backlash. Ning Shu raised his hand and felt the energy around him. Then, he drew a charm in the air. This charm had the power of a curse. Ning Shu silently chanted Jin Yang's name in his heart. Even if he wanted to curse, he needed a medium. Maybe a name or a familiar aura. In short, he needed a medium. The charm flew out of the window. It turned into a ray of light and flew directly to Jin Yang's location. Now, Jin Yang was at the Li family. Jin Yang was considered a permanent resident of the Li family. The Li family was very welcoming of Jin Yang. Because of Jin Yang's help, the crisis had been resolved. Many buyers automatically came to the Li family. It was because of Jin Yang that the Li family had business and orders. At this moment, Li Guqiu was cutting fruits for Jin Yang. Jin Yang was sitting on the sofa and staring at Li Guqiu. Li Guqiu didn't know what to do. She said coldly, "Why are you looking at me?" "Of course, I'm looking at you." Jin Yang felt a chill run down his spine. Then, this chill spread throughout his body. As a physiognomist, Jin Yang knew very well that someone was plotting against him. Using the methods of a physiognomist to plot against him. What a joke. Li Guqiu saw Jin Yang's face change drastically. He sneered and was shocked. She thought that she had said something that made Jin Yang angry. She quickly asked, "What's wrong?" Jin Yang shook his head. "Nothing." It's just that some people are a little harder to deal with than I thought. He didn't expect that there would be someone in the world of physiognomists who could break the curse. However, he could only break it once, but not twice. He couldn't have someone following Zhang Tianbao around every day and paying attention to him all the time. Even a tiger would take a nap sometimes. Jin Yang thought that Zhang Tianbao would come to him with a bruised face. He didn't expect the situation to be like this. It seemed that the capital was really full of crouching tigers and hidden dragons. He couldn't underestimate them. Jin Yang said to Li Guqiu, "I'm leaving." Then, he got up from the sofa and left. Hey. Li Guqiu wanted to stop Jin Yang, but Jin Yang left without looking back. This made Li Guqiu feel a little sad and disappointed. Chapter 33:20. It didn't feel good to worry about personal gains and losses. Ever since Li Guqiu met Jin Yang, her heart hadn't felt at ease for a single day. It was always hanging in the air, swaying up and down. It was soul-stirring. This was an experience she had never experienced in her boring life. No wonder love was something that humans pursued and praised since the birth of mankind. She had mixed feelings. Amidst the sweetness, there was anxiety and worry. Now Li Guqiu was worried about why Jin Yang suddenly changed his expression and left. The apple she peeled for him was untouched. Anticipation, disappointment, worry, and confusion. She didn't feel like herself anymore. The calm Li Guqiu seemed to have disappeared. But this feeling seemed to be good. A man like Jin Yang should be liked by many girls. Sigh, Li Guqiu fell into worry again. There was also the matter of the Zhang family. Jin Yang returned to his rented room and began to remove the curse on his body. And the additional effect of this curse was actually very painful. It felt like there were worms drilling and wriggling in his skin. It was numb and painful. Jin Yang smiled. A bit interesting. It was a good opportunity to exchange blows with a powerful physiognomist in the capital. Previously, he wanted to deal with that playboy Zhang Tianbao. He could easily beat him to tears and snot. He would definitely come to him dejectedly. The powerful one was not Zhang Tianbao, but the family behind him. The family's financial resources could find a powerful physiognomist for Zhang Tianbao. The old man at home said that the capital was full of talents and there were many physiognomist families. Some inconspicuous old fortune-tellers were masters. As the cultural and political center, the capital was also a place where masters from various sects and industries gathered. Since coming to the capital, Jin Yang could be said to have been successful. In addition, he had been cultivating since he was a child. He was also very talented in this aspect. It could be said that it was difficult to meet a match. Today, a physiognomist cursed him. Naturally, Jin Yang felt that it was very interesting. Jin Yang began to remove the negative energy from his body. The opponent's curse this time was not very strong. Jin Yang used 2 talismans to remove the curse. It seemed that the physiognomist hired by the Zhang family was not very good. Although he could use curses, his strength was not bad. And the method was relatively simple. How to put it? The method was relatively simple. It was a very painful curse. People were not fools who didn't know pain. That kind of invisible thing was the most fatal. It wouldn't cause physical harm, but mental harm was the most important. In a society ruled by law, any injury on the body could be identified by a forensic doctor. TSK, is that all you've got? In that case, I'll give you another big gift. Now, Jin Yang's fighting spirit had been completely aroused. A battle between physiognomists was about to take place. This time, Jin Yang was more serious. He drew a talisman in the air, drawing a very large and complicated talisman. In the process of drawing the talisman, Jin Yang was sweating profusely. It was obvious that drawing this talisman had drained almost all of Jinyang's strength. Even the old man at home might not be able to break this curse. This was something he had learned from the crumpled books that the old man had collected. He had experimented with it several times and had succeeded. It was just that the consumption was too great. This complicated talisman made people feel dizzy just by looking at it. Jinyang's talisman paper locked onto Ning Shu, and Ning Shu immediately felt a sense of pressure and foreboding. This time, the feeling was even stronger than last time. It was obvious that this curse was much stronger than the previous one. The physiognomist who lived in the Zhang family immediately sensed the fluctuation of the magnetic field and hurried to Ning Shu's room. "Come behind me." The physiognomist shouted to Ning Shu, and then threw the talisman paper into the air to resist the curse. The physiognomist's face turned ugly. Someone can actually draw talismans in the air. Who is it? Although there were many physiognomists, the most powerful ones were only able to poke people, and they were widely known in the world of physiognomists. Who was the master who had made this move? The talisman paper naturally couldn't be compared to Jinyang's curse. Soon, the talisman paper spontaneously combusted, and the energy disappeared. The physiognomist's face changed greatly, and he quickly stuck the possession talisman on Zhang Tianbao. He was a guest of the Zhang family to protect Zhang Tianbao. Although Zhang Tianbao was a hedonistic son, he was paid to help. If Zhang Tianbao died, his reputation would be damaged. There would be no business in the future. Just as Jinyang's curse approached, Ning Shu's body flickered with power and directly dissolved the power of the curse. This power was not something else, but something that Ning Shu hadn't used before to prevent people from cursing him. Last time, Jinyang's method couldn't activate this item. It probably didn't reach the standard of a curse. But this time, the energy fluctuation was strong, so this item was activated. Even without this item, Ning Shu could still solve this curse. Of course, it would be better if he didn't do it. He would just treat himself as a hedonistic son. Especially in front of a physiognomist, it would inevitably arouse some suspicion. The curse was removed, and the pressure in the room suddenly lightened. The physiognomist looked at Ning Shu suspiciously. "Why are you fine?" The physiognomist didn't believe that his talisman paper could resist the curse. But he didn't expect that he was safe and sound. Ning Shu said, I can't say." The physiognomist didn't ask anymore. Who didn't have a family heirloom? Maybe it was some powerful magic weapon or amulet. But he couldn't stay in the Zhang family anymore. The other party was very powerful. Even if he escaped once, there would be a next time. The physiognomist looked at Ning Shu with pity in his eyes. It was as if he was looking at a corpse. Offending a physiognomist wasn't scary. What was scary was offending a powerful physiognomist. Anyway, he couldn't stay here. He didn't want to die here. So the physiognomist said goodbye to Old Man Zhang. No matter how Old Man Zhang urged him to stay, he refused to stay. Old Man Zhang helplessly gave the physiognomist a sum of money. The Zhang family didn't lack this money. There was no need to offend a physiognomist for this little money. Ning Shu asked, "Is young master's temper rising again? These physiognomists aren't your bad friends. You can shout at them as you wish." Ning Shu shook his head. "No, the Li family made a move just now. Their physiognomist is more powerful, so I was scared. They made a move again. Are you okay?" Old Man Zhang hurriedly stood up and looked at Ning Shu. "Are you going to be unlucky again?" Ning Shu shook his head. "I'm fine. The physiognomist has already dealt with it. We were lucky. We escaped this time, but we might not be able to do so next time. Dad, move the ancestral grave. Do it secretly. Don't let anyone know." In the plot, Jin Yang did something to the Zhang family's ancestral grave. He buried the Zhang family's ancestors in an ominous place. According to feudal superstitions, the ancestors didn't have a good life. How could they protect the descendants? Chapter 33:21. It made sense in terms of feng shui and magnetic field. Didn't the family come to sweep the grave? Since they did, they would definitely be enveloped by the magnetic field around the grave. Mr. Zhang said, "Why does it involve the ancestral grave?" The ancestral grave couldn't be touched easily. It might affect the family. Digging out the bones of the ancestors, if the ancestors really sensed it, it would be strange if they were happy. Ning Shu said, "I know who the other party's fortune teller is. It's Jin Yang. The Li family can get out of this crisis because of Jin Yang." Mr. Zhang said with disdain, "A family depends on one fortune teller." Ning Shu said, "Dad, don't underestimate the fortune teller. I'm in such a mess now because of the fortune teller. If we sneak into the ancestral grave, we won't know anything." Fortune tellers were like ordinary people. Some were magnanimous, and some were insidious. Moving the ancestral grave is a big deal. It will take some time. There were many people in the Zhang family. Moving the ancestral grave required the consent of many people in the family. Ning Shu shrugged and said directly, "Just do it secretly. You don't have to tell everyone." "Brat, it's not that simple." It was easy to say. Ning Shu said, "You'd better hurry up. The Li family has been threatened by us for a long time. At least they think so. Now it's time to fight back. They won't let us go so easily. If it weren't for the Zhang family, there wouldn't be a Li family for a long time," Mr. Zhang said. "No one likes to be controlled by others. This is normal. Besides, the Li family hates people saying that they relied on the Zhang family to get where they are today. Although it was true, it made it sound like the Li family was incompetent. They relied on selling their daughter to get where they are. If you give me a little, I'll give you a little, but if you don't, I'll hate you." The more he gave, the easier it was for him to become enemies. The Zhang family's support to the Li family, whether intentional or not, made the Li family so aggrieved. "I can't make the decision to move the ancestral grave. I have to discuss it with the respectable people in the family. If you don't want to move the ancestral grave, then move the graves of our great-grandparents." This brat just casually said a few words, and others would do everything for him. Besides, Mr. Zhang felt that no matter how bad the Li family was, they wouldn't think about other people's ancestors. Wasn't this a little too vicious? Moreover, it was very easy to implicate the innocent. They were not the only branch of the Zhang family. No one in the real world would be willing to do such a thing, unless they were some crafty physiognomist. Ning Shu said, "If you don't want to move, then I'll do it secretly. Anyway, it's for the Zhang family. Stinking brat, don't move recklessly. If you break any taboo, don't say that others are looking for the ancestral grave, you'll be courting death first." Ning Shu chuckled, "Dad, don't worry. I'm absolutely reliable. Father Zhang, hee, the biggest joke of the century." On the other side, because the curse technique was broken, some of the Golden Sons suffered a backlash. Originally, the energy in their bodies had been drained. Now that they suffered a backlash, their dantian and meridians dried up. It was as painful as being cut by a knife. Beads of blood gradually seeped out of the pores on his skin. After a while, Jin Yang was dyed red. He was a bloody man. Jin Yang endured the pain and began to adjust his breathing. However, he was still somewhat displeased and his qi and blood were restless. What the hell? He had already used such a method, but he didn't expect that it would still be broken. This was the disadvantage of using this curse technique. The more energy it absorbed, the more powerful it would be. However, after using it, he might not have the power to fight back. He might be killed by the enemy. Now, it was still broken. The 2 consecutive failures made Jin Yang impatient. Since he came to the capital, everything had been smooth sailing. Now, the setback made Jin Yang gnash his teeth. He couldn't even pass his own test. Were there really so many capable people in the capital? Could it be that some old monsters who lived in seclusion had come out? Or were there still fortune tellers helping the Zhang family? After all, the fortune tellers in the capital couldn't compare to those who had been in business for decades or even several lifetimes. The old man was really something. He bragged every day that he was a big shot in the fortune teller world. However, when he asked other fortune tellers, they said that they didn't know such a person at all. This old man was either bragging or using an alias. The most important thing now was to heal his injured meridians. The meridians were the foundation of cultivation. Who would have thought that he would go for wool and come home shorn, biting himself instead? Jin Yang, what's wrong with you? Are you okay? Li Guqiu walked into the room with the chicken soup. When she saw Jin Yang covered in blood, she screamed in fright and the thermos in her hand fell to the ground. The clang and Li Guqiu's scream directly woke Jin Yang up from his cultivation. Suddenly stopping his cultivation and being forced to stop, the blood in Jin Yang's body suddenly became chaotic. He couldn't suppress it anymore and spat out a mouthful of old blood. When Li Guqiu saw him spit out blood, she became even more anxious. She quickly took out a handkerchief and wiped his face. Jin Yang was angry for a moment. Anyone who had their cultivation interrupted would feel unhappy. If they were interrupted while they were comprehending something, it would be like killing their parents. It wasn't easy for people to have an epiphany. It was a situation that could only be encountered by chance. Li Guqiu was frightened by Jin Yang's eyes. Her hand holding the handkerchief trembled, but she still asked worriedly, "What's wrong with you?" Facing Li Guqiu's beautiful face, Jin Yang suppressed his inner irritation a little. Beautiful people were naturally worthy of forgiveness. He said, "It's nothing. There's just something wrong with my cultivation. Don't disturb me when you see me cultivating in the future. Otherwise, I'll easily get into trouble." Li Guqiu said guiltily, "I know. Are you okay?" "I'm fine." Jin Yang felt that he was a little careless. How could he meditate in the living room? He had given Li Guqiu the key to the house. Li Guqiu and Pei Meng would come at any time. Jin Yang's blood was not flowing smoothly now. He didn't want to deal with Li Guqiu, so he went directly to the bedroom to cultivate. Li Guqiu held the thermos with a disappointed face. This was the chicken soup she had made herself. Sometimes, Jin Yang's enthusiasm was unbearable, but there were also times when he made people feel uneasy. Sometimes he was far and sometimes he was close. Sometimes he was cold and sometimes he was hot. It was unpredictable. Ning Shu said that he was going to move the graves. After that, Ning Shu really wandered around the capital. Father Zhang asked Ning Shu what he was doing. Ning Shu said that he was looking for a blessed land to bury his ancestors. Father Zhang really wanted to beat this bastard to death. How could he do something like moving the graves just like that? And the place you're looking for is a blessed land? Headache? He might as well go eat, drink, and play with his friends. He hoped that he could do something serious. But he did such a big thing as soon as he came. If you can find a blessed land, those physiognomists should be unemployed. You're the expert in eating, drinking, and playing. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.